back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Cosmographia, the Randall Carlson podcast. And I think last recorded episode we were discussing serpent symbolism and mythology surrounding that symbol. And now we're moving forward into a new topic, but also related, as all of this stuff usually is related in some way or another. Planetary change, catastrophes, natural disasters. Right? Is that right, Randall? That's where we're going?
I think we should delve into that for a while.
Yeah.
Crazy weather events.
Yes.
Yeah, and we need a context. I mean, especially with, the political climate and the discussion, people need better context to understand some of the claims being made back and forth. So I thought we could devote a few podcasts to looking at some of the things that might be considered kind of controversial, but, we're always hearing that we should follow the science. So, okay, let's do that. Let's follow the science.
Yeah,
see where it takes us.
Mm-hmm. I'm all about it.
May not lead to where some people want it to go, but we're going to give it a shot anyway.
Might lead to us being kicked off YouTube.
Well, it might lead to us getting chastised a few times.
We got plenty of warning banners already.
Yes, we do.
Are we getting warning banners?
Yeah, you get YouTube comments about that pretty regularly.
Yep.
Tell me about that. I don't.
They are badges of honor. That's how you look at it. Every time you get a warning banner from YouTube, you're like, doing it right.
Okay, we're getting warning banners from YouTube. Are you saying, wait a minute, we have?
So what'll happen is you post a show, and if YouTube, the algos, or in the description or anything, they detect something that may be controversial, they'll put a lot of times they'll put a link and say, here's the real story on whatever it is they think you're talking about, and they'll provide a link to something.
Really?
To the authorities.
Yeah, to the authoritative statements of mainstream thought on that subject.
Okay, so in regards to the subjects we've been talking about, then what you're saying then is that the bona fide experts are weighing in?
Yeah,
okay.
Through the YouTube algos, yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I haven't really looked. It's like, the UN IPCC has determined that global, climate change is blah, 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 and you should, read here first.
That's right,
Yeah, I haven't gone back and looked at them, but yeah, there's multiple videos that people comment that are flagged like that.
Yep.
But yeah, like Russ says, it's kind of a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's like,
but,
okay, well, yeah, definitely listen to this.
Yeah.
So this is an algorithm doing it or an actual person sitting there?
Well, I mean, something gets flagged somehow.
Somehow, but we don't know how.
It's a black box system, as far as I know. Like, something gets flagged somehow. I imagine that the little banners that pop up down there are just automatically placed when something is determined that you're saying something about climate change that may be not, part of the.
Because everything
Official.
is instantaneously transcribed.
Yeah.
It goes through a checking process as soon as you upload it. So that's what it's transcribing everything. So it knows exactly what's said. So then it processes and says, oh, well, this is, they said younger Dryas. Oh, that's a climate issue. Flag this one.
Yeah.
So you think that younger Dryas is a trigger word or something?
I think it's getting to be. If
Well,
it's not already, yeah.
Discussing the younger Dryas, undoubtedly the words climate and change come up.
Oh, yeah.
And so,
Right.
you can pick up on that, and then, maybe it picks up on that no humans were around for that to happen.
Very few, at least.
Very
for
few.
we know, yeah. Rapid natural climate change in the recent past.
Not
So-
caused by humans.
Yeah.
So what is it you're calling these things that?
Algorithms, like, just
Yeah,
the
algorithms.
algos. Yeah.
Okay, and that's just, so we've got X number of algos, or we got X number of, what did you?
The banners.
Yeah, the banners. Like, the algorithm is what flags or notices something
Right,
in the
and
show.
then they put a
either through the-
banner up there.
Yes, that's right. Right beneath the
Yeah.
banner.
It's kind of the bots that run through and
Speed
monitor
run.
everything and read everything and,
Yeah.
and say, oh, this is controversial.
Yeah.
It needs this kind of
Like what?
notice,
Like
right?
what?
So it's not disinformation
Oh, I
or
hate this stupid
misinformation or whatever
Yeah.
the latest number
Right.
is for propaganda.
So okay, that's cool. So what we want to see how many of those banners we can get.
Yeah, that's a good
Ideally.
goal. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going the more we get. Okay.
Yeah, this one's got it already.
Yeah.
I was gonna
Anybody
say
in the
that.
comments that sees a banner on this, definitely say something. We'll see how many comments we get about the banners.
Okay. So that's just weird. I guess I'm out of touch here or something.
That'll be easy enough to find. I'll send you a link to the ones that people are saying have that notice on.
So it's not because people who are listening are flagging something.
No.
It's coming straight from. Okay.
Yeah. But what would be fun is if you would follow up on the links and go see where are they sending people and what exactly is it saying, and we could talk about that. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
I would do.
That'd
Yeah.
be a good thing.
Yeah.
Oh.
Randall reports. New episode.
Yeah. There you go.
Hey. Well. So yeah, we should talk for a minute about our recent excursion. You guys were there, weren't you?
Sure. Yeah, man.
Montana.
You got a shirt at least.
I got this shirt. I don't remember who gave it to me. Go here. There we go. Yeah. Oh yeah, Brad's got his too.
That must not
Yeah,
have
I
been
was
there.
I was at a dinner party and somebody came in and started handing out these shirts.
I'll be back one sec.
That's what I remember.
Okay.
Chief Cliff prominently displayed right there on the
I was
west
just
side
about-
of Flathead Lake.
Yeah, I was just about to ask Kyle, what's that depicted on the T-shirt? But you knew, didn't you, Kyle?
I do now, Randall.
You would have been able to answer that. So
Too
somewhere,
late
you know,
for you to know.
I did actually look into one of the couple of the YouTube chats, which, you know, I should do that more. I have to confess, I barely ever look at that because it just, I just zero time, you know?
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
sometimes I do, when I look at it, I'll end up being in there like 2 or 3 hours, like reading
Right.
through the comments. And
Yeah.
stuff. But the last two I looked at after we got back from Montana, there was a couple of comments about me picking on Kyle.
Yes,
And,
I've seen those too. Yeah, Randall's always picking on Kyle. Yep.
Hey, thanks for sticking up for me
And
out
I-
there, folks. Unless they were like congratulating you for doing that.
Yeah. Keep picking on that dude. He deserves it.
Yeah, well, after I felt that, I felt a deep sense of guilt and remorse. I was overcome by. So
Lies.
I made a commitment.
Need a YouTube
I made
banner
a
right
commitment
now.
then and there, Kyle, that I'll try not to pick on you so much. But I'm not making it.
Yo, what up,
I'm
Rev?
just-
I'm more set up
try.
now.
But
Got my comfy chair
but
now.
people need to understand. Look,
Oh, I got my foot pad.
this is how
I got like
some
my
guys- in the old
an angled
days, this
foot
is how
pad, you know,
guys
for
used to,
work.
You know, proclaim
I'm
your
using it for the
friendship by
gaming
giving
now.
each other a hard time.
I'm ready to
Yeah,
go.
yeah. I mean, dude, these people in the comments, they don't get to hear all the shit we give each other all the time. So, I mean, nonstop
So-
in the bus. I drove the bus that Randall was riding in the Montana trip, and I was just constantly giving him crap, like all day. That's
He
like
was.
my favorite thing.
That's
yeah.
true. He was.
Yeah.
And we were
Yeah.
too, and he wasn't even the same bus.
Oh,
No, not true. Kyle does get props for the
Yeah, buddy,
humor,
I'm back
too.
in Canada now,
Sometimes he
man.
Slips them in and,
Back
they
in
just
Canada,
don't
homie.
notice, but,
Thanks, buddy.
people out there. are
Yeah, I was in
listening.
Vegas, as you knew, as you saw.
That's right.
It was awesome.
Oh, keep
It was
them
amazing.
coming, Randall. Keep them coming.
guys got a
homeboy.
new,
Your day in the sun.
Oh,
is
this is so
coming.
much
That
better.
too. I think that's,
This is so good now with my
It
feet
is
and
a
my
big
chair.
improvement. Yeah, we're trying out something new. We're using the iPhone
Yeah,
itself.
I kind of had it all in my
Means that
other
I
room
can't
for work.
Look up stuff. I'll have to look up stuff on the computer.
Yeah, so Randall, if you're making a demand for somebody to look something up, it'll have to be
I
me.
don't know though. Maybe I
I
should
can still do
set
it.
up
I
my
can pull up the
TV
browser
there
here
too.
and you can't see it. Yeah, you're right. You know,
Be hilarious.
he's trying to take over my
Because
job.
there's so much set up.
So
Tear-
yeah, we
like,
had some crazy weather
set up
out
and
there
tear
on our
down
trip,
time, I
really,
guess.
First time we've been lucky out in the desert, Four Corners and in Scablands. It's been pretty sunny and nice, but we got 3 days of really constant rain there in Spokane, and then first 2 days in Idaho, and then got hailed on in Missoula, marble-sized hail. So yeah, it's kind of good to lead into a weather-oriented episode here.
I have a great video of.
Yeah.
I was in my van videoing Randall standing outside of his van, and it was just hailing on him. Just
What?
waiting, and finally, he's like,
Like
kind of like,
what?
okay, well maybe the hail's serious.
Yo,
enough
could you use
now.
a
He
new
starts
chair?
walking towards the van, and then
Falling
looking at
apart.
his back, and he's like,
Dude, do it, man. I paid I paid a really good price. I paid like less than $250. This was the most comfortable chair in the store.
Well,
I bought the most comfortable chair in the store, and it was also not too expensive. I paid what, $210 plus
Well, what was
tax.
great
Yeah,
was
that-
everyone was blaming
So
Randall.
just only Staples.
They were
This is
like,
made in
"What's the
Canada
deal?
though.
Like, can you stop the Zeus thing right now? Like,
It's comfy,
We paid
man.
good money for this tour.
And
We
the
did
foot
not sign up for all
thing,
this
you know, the
rain and hail
angled
and
footrest?
inclement weather. But you know, look,
like key
everybody
for
got out
leverage
in
even
it. I
on
got
this
wet
level.
twice and dried off.
Yep.
No worse for the wear, but you know, we stopped at
What's up, buddy? Hope you're doing well, man.
at
Got the mic
Cabot Gorge
going.
Dam. I think was our
That's-
first real
yeah.
stop, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was impressive.
especially because the other
Oh,
thing
yeah.
that like along with all the rain we were getting having rain on us, they had huge floods right before we came up there, like right before the tour started. So everything, all the rivers were up, all the lakes were full. Like there was, I mean, they were literally having flooding. There were huge logs floating down the river. The rivers were rapid and wild.
Waterfalls are gushing, and the
Yeah.
dams had the
Dams, all the doors were
gates
open.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah, that was. I mean,
Was it birthday?
that we
Nice.
were out there.
Nice, man.
To study the floods, and then those first.
This
few
weekend?
days,
Nice,
we
buddy.
got to
Congratulations.
see-
That's fun. That's always nice.
And remember at Cabinet Gorge Dam, as we're looking.
40th is next
impressive
month.
as that
Wow,
was,
nice, man.
That water coming down through that.
It was my bro's 40th
stocks there, shooting out under pressure.
3 weeks ago.
What I saw there was exactly what I had been envisioning
cool, man.
for the origin of Boulder Park. You guys remember Boulder Park when that water came shooting under the Okanagan lobe, and it hit the channel of the Columbia,
Yeah.
and that high pressure water coming shooting up, just like we saw at Cabinet Gorge Dam,
Yeah, it's
shooting
coming up, yeah.
and just ripping out the walls of that cliff, that basalt cliff, and all of that stuff getting splayed out over the Waterville Plateau, and
Right.
is now Boulder Park. That's what that was and you know, I've been trying to visualize that process. And when we stood there looking down at Cabinet Gorge Dam, I thought, yep, that's it right there.
And it was amazing because the water was, I mean, it was loud. There was.
Still don't know what you want to do if you really know,
mist and
man.
Steam, and then the water below the dam was,
all good,
was
man.
turbulent. There were all these crazy eddies and flows
Yep,
and
yep.
waves splashing up against. There was a whole area around the side of the dam where you could see there was a big eddy that had cut. You know, when the flood was. Or way earlier when the flood was big, it cut
It's your
it out of
birthday, you
there,
could
but
do
when
what you
lost
wanted,
the water, and then you're just
as the
thinking,
song
like,
says.
take this times like,
I
I don't know,
definitely shot that guy, like,
5,000,
a lot more times
whatever,
than
several orders of magnitude. You know, you're watching this amazing thing, and you're just like, this is tiny compared to
Yeah.
what made this gorge.
What we should say here is that this is near the mouth. So it's near the point where just east of Lake Pend Oreille, near the exit point of Lake Missoula. Basically right where in the conventional model, the standard model, the lake water met the ice did. And usually that position is centered pretty close around the present position of Cabinet Gorge Dam. And
And
so,
that was actually right behind me.
yeah, right behind Brett. There we go.
like, fuck you.
How appropriate.
The dam is right back behind that hill there.
Uh-huh.
Town of Clark Fork and the
Pardon my
lakes
language.
out that way.
And so Cabinet Gorge Dam would have been down to Brad's right. Kind of just off but down in the valley, somewhere right down in there.
Yep.
Yeah, so that rain recharged all the streams and the waterfalls, so
What?
No,
Like,
I
what?
guess he
Come
probably
on,
told you, but
man.
Yeah, he's a
It's so
dam engineer
stupid.
actually that's been on several tours with us
Such
now,
a
and he
stupid
checked,
level.
and I think the rating he got was estimated to be 90 to 100,000 cubic feet per second coming through that dam.
Oh, was it? So that I was confused on that. Was that
I hate
max
stupid level.
it could let through, or was that what was coming through at the time we were looking at it?
I think that was what was coming through as we were looking at it.
That was
Okay.
my understanding. That's what we were witnessing. Yes.
Okay, so he was able to find an up-to-date, like what they're letting through right now.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So 100,000 cubic feet per second versus
Yeah, so given, let's say, the peak discharges of the Cordilleran floods, as I'm rechristening them, or the Missoula floods, they're
Like
in
what?
Spokane Valley, Rat Drum Prairie, just south of Lake Pend Oreille, would have been on the order of 7,700 times greater than the discharge
Like,
we were witnessing.
so much waste time.
7,700. How about that? How do you even
Wow.
wrap your head around that?
Yeah. Nope.
And I had
Pretty small.
a very similar
Thanks for being here,
overall
Rep.
take on this portion of
You
the,
roll, man.
the mega floods tours. All that driving, all those miles we covered, and you're just in this lake basin. Every time
Auto
you
aim
go
really
through
helped me there.
a narrows, and you come out in this massive valley. The landscapes in that part of the world are just
What?
huge and vast. And the mountains are tall, and
What?
there's not a whole lot of trees in a lot of the places, and you can see the strand lines way out there, and it's just like, okay, this is insane how big this basin was. And you're driving through the bottom of it, and you go through another narrows, and then boom, it opens again. Many miles down the road, and you're still doing it, and you just was like, this is so much,
Yeah, you spend.
and it's only half of what is necessary to produce the floods we were looking at in the Scablands. It's like,
No, Kyle, not even half.
Not even.
well, half what's coming through in
Okay,
south
yeah,
of Lake Pend Oreille.
yeah, okay.
Sorry.
It's like, yeah, we're under 1,000 feet of water here. We're under 2,000 feet of water.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
We're under 800 feet of water here. Just everywhere we went, basically, we were at the bottom of a 1,000-foot plus deep lake. It's crazy.
Yeah, so once again, it's far too vast, I think, even to conceptualize while you're driving through it. In other words, seeing it, for me, made me realize the vastness that is beyond my comprehension.
Like
That's what happened with the Scablands too. Yeah, it's like it's
That's so
big.
stupid.
Then you get out there and you're like, yep, I knew it was big, and it's even bigger than I thought it was, even when I knew it was big, and now I know that it's too big
Yes.
to really think about.
Too big.
And so, yeah, to correct that, it's
Like
it's
what?
half the I was talking about
Like
the
so
guy who
stupid,
measured
man.
the flows from Eddie Narrows, which would have been everything from that basin that we were in,
Yeah,
versus the flows from south of Pend Oreille. I don't remember where what that place was.
And there
called.
wasn't enough water coming
Like
through Eddie
what?
Narrows
right.
Like
to
what?
make up the flow down there. Yeah.
To put it in turn, I mean, we could talk about
So
cubic
dumb.
feet per second. We could talk about cubic meters per second. I like to talk about cubic miles per second because, really almost what you need to do is you're going to need to get your head around what 1 cubic mile of water is. You almost need to go out and stand on a promenade somewhere where you have clear view, 90 degrees in both directions, 1 mile.
Yeah.
And
you need a
it's
plane.
pretty far.
Yeah.
Yes,
You
and
need
then
a
you
plane a
need-
mile above you. Yeah.
You need something a mile
airliner.
above you, yes. To picture, I try to sell a picture
Wow.
an ice cube, 1 mile on a side. And then you think one draining of Lake Missoula is 600 of those. Just one drain.
Yeah.
What?
But we're looking
What?
at
Did you see how
multiple drains.
fast that guy came here?
Because
Like what?
that water kept, and see, I mean, think about it. If we really wanted to
Jeez.
cover the whole territory,
silly.
for example, we would be up there in
Like,
Boulder Park
it's
in
so
Washington.
silly,
We
man.
would drive north.
Like,
hundreds
it's
of miles
just-
further,
it's too
up
much.
the Okanagan Valley, tracing the same damn flood.
Yeah.
We could do, if we go to the north end of Flathead Lake, there at the south end of Rocky Mountain Trench, start driving there all the way up to Prince
Wow.
George.
Isn't that amazing?
We're still in the flood.
Yeah. Crazy. The
Go.
other great. Sorry.
It's
go
fine.
ahead.
Well, I was just saying, drive west down through the Columbia Gorge.
That was actually really bad.
We haven't even taken that in yet.
Oh, it was too slow
Figure
anyways.
out how to include the Columbia
Give me like a
Gorge
108
into it.
death. Probably a little more.
Because that is spectacular in its own right. And then make
Wow.
some side excursions up
That's
some of
after
those
being spot on.
tributary rivers because they're
Just a
amazing
random
and
time.
have these enormous backflood landscapes in them. Then you get down there to Portland.
Wow.
Then you go south all the way to the south end of Willamette Valley. And you got a massive backflood that has entered that valley, loaded with icebergs. Those icebergs are loaded with erratic boulders, and then I think we talked about the Willamette meteorite, didn't we?
Oh yeah,
Yes.
man, the pictures of that thing are just.
Now, see, and what's wild about that is, number one, it was in a cluster of basalt erratics and with some granite mixed in, which is undoubtedly from Canada, right?
Yeah.
So apparently you had basalt out of Washington, granite out of southern British Columbia, and that meteorite all being carried together on an iceberg.
Nice,
that
good
then
start. Really, really, really good
backfloated
start.
south into the Willamette Valley, came to
I can't believe
ground,
he's still alive.
and then melted away and left that pile there. Like, hey, look at this.
Yeah.
How about this for some forensic evidence, huh?
Please cooperate.
I would venture to say that the Willamette meteorite
Oh,
is probably
shit.
one little speck crumb
It's
of whatever
garbage.
fell over the ice sheet.
You know, we drove as a family up there, and then on the way back, and we got to take different
Yo,
routes.
what up, Aaron?
Obviously, we drove to Spokane, and then we left.
This is a garbage run.
From Flathead Lake.
What's up, buddy?
On the way back, it was great because we went down by Salt Lake City.
There's no way I with the
and
other
got
guy.
to drive
Yeah.
through the Bonneville Basin.
Yeah.
So after spending all that time around the Missoula area and seeing all the strand lines and all this stuff, then we get down in there and we start
Wow.
we're like looking at these mountains way out there in the desert,
Wow.
and you're like, there it is.
Yo, Rev,
Going
with
through
the
these
emotes.
Catastrophic, what looked like catastrophic flood
Yeah, buddy.
areas
North end of the basin.
on the north end of the
Yeah.
basin.
Basalt cliffs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy huge channels and.
And you get out and you're
boulders
just like,
everywhere.
okay, we're in a huge valley, and it's got strand lines way up on the mountains, way out there on both sides. And you drive, you're going 80 miles an hour for hours, and you go through another channel, and then you come out, and there's another one. You're like, wow, we're still in
Yeah.
the lake. Oh man, it was amazing. Such a
I
great
like Red Dead 2. Yo, we got the homies in
it
chat.
kind of conveys
Thanks, guys.
kind of a different impression of this planet we live on,
Yes.
and then the realization. There's two realizations that kind of happen in
Come
tandem.
on. What?
One is just
How did I even
trying
miss
to
that?
grasp this reality of these such enormous events and the type of climatic consequences that would be implied by events of this scale, right? You're not just going to have some phenomena like this multi-state flooding. We're talking Utah, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, Washington, British Columbia, Alberta, right? Nevada.
Yeah,
Nevada,
New
we
York.
got to include Nevada in that, right?
Yeah.
And that's
Finger
just,
Lakes.
yeah, exactly. So not only is
So
it
what they're doing is they're
the-
talking about
just, you know,
events
coming to grips with the existence of such
of massive
phenomena and
changes in
realizing
climate over the past
phenomena on this scale
10,000
of
years,
magnitude
much
are
greater
not
than,
some
say, the effect of
science
global warming,
fiction
which
or
is true. Like,
fantasy or it's
what
not
he's really
some
upset about is
disaster
the
movie. It's
panic
real.
and the dire
right?
predictions
That's number one. Number two
compared
is
to the past. But
that
what I think what he
almost no
needs to
one
understand is
knows
the
about.
past was so catastrophic that it like totally
Virtually
destroyed
no- I mean,
pretty
think
much
about
everything,
how many
which he knows that she's very aware of.
outside of our circle.
So
and
every like
geologists
it's
have
sensitive,
even
like
the
really
slightest
sensitive.
comprehension of this kind of scale of events
Sensitive
that we're
system.
talking about.
But I
Nope,
agree,
hardly
like
anyone. Hardly anyone.
People just aren't
definitely
taking the time to cover the territory like we
shouldn't
have
change what we fuck we do.
and see the range. Like they're saying, 80 miles, and then
Just
you go
shouldn't-
through another channel, and then there's still those shorelines
Biggest
out there.
problem is probably
They're still there.
desertification
It's huge,
and the
huge.
creation
When I
of
was in
unarable
school,
land
you know, about
in South America,
history and
in
stuff, it's like-
Asia.
the ice age,
Africa.
the extinction of the mammoths, and all that stuff was just like a paragraph.
That's the biggest
Yeah.
fear.
It's like, yeah, there was ice.
The
and then,
soybean farms
now
and
there's
the
not.
sugarcane
Now
you
there's
know, all
none.
these animals, and now they're
cutting
gone.
down all the forests.
There was no
There's no more
focus
transpiration.
Right.
There's no
on
more
that
evapotranspiration.
interval there between these two.
The forest provides the water.
Yeah.
It's called the water
amazing
cycle.
that it's not
Like this is like rudimentary stuff.
more
This is why it drives me crazy when people
Well, it isn't. And,
Don't.
and the surprising thing to me is I've
think that
know,
like
had the opportunity
desertification
to,
and like Venus. Like take Venus for example.
communicate or
Venus
to,
has a super high carbon dioxide
you know,
amount
to
on their
exchange
like carbon
ideas with
dioxide
professionals
atmosphere.
in
Same with Mars.
you know, in
Like it's
geology and related fields, is
inhabitable.
that
Inhabitable.
most of them don't really know either.
And like we could,
No, most of them don't.
Venus is
know
pretty much
the
almost exactly the same
magnitude of these
size as Earth.
events. You guys brought in the
Could have
Bonneville
been unearthed before,
we've
maybe.
been pointing at the Tammany Bar deposits.
There's sulfuric
and
acid there, which
multiple
suggests that there
shows
might be
we've made
oxygen as
reference
well,
to that. And
right?
what that tells us
H2SO4,
about the
or at least the sulfate group
temporal relationship
SO4.
between these two phenomena.
Yeah, I kind of
Which
wish we
makes
would
it
have
really interesting.
diverted to go look at that. I didn't realize we were going to be going down into the Bonneville.
If we acidify our atmosphere as much as
Scrape
possible,
away,
it could
that
do it like
exposure is no longer there.
Venus is
Yeah.
the
We're
like
gonna
the
have
extreme,
to get them to cut a new one. 'Cause, yeah, it's been
and we're just on that path.
Call up the quarry
become
at
part of
Tammany.
the quarry. Yeah, it's been sorted and scraped away.
But yeah, that doesn't mean
Yeah,
we
but at
shouldn't be
least
driving
we have photo
V8s and stuff.
documentation of the,
That's right.
we went there and, well, did we go there in 98?
Yeah, we were there the very first trip.
First trip, 98.
Fuck off.
Trying to understand the connection and relationship between these two gigantic floods that are generally not
Way too loud.
considered to have been have any kind of a common cause. That they're two unrelated events, spectacular but unrelated events.
But
perhaps
they were.
separate.
Are they accepted to basically have happened close to the same time already, or?
Yeah, if close to the same time as a millennia or two.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's 12 or 1500 years.
The thing that really gets me about the Bonneville flood is that that basin was maintained at a level for so long, meaning
Something.
whatever the
Fuck
climate
right
system
off.
was,
Like,
the patterns
fuck
of
off.
climate at that time kept enough rainfall to overcome evaporation of that basin. And then once it suddenly filled up 300 feet and overfilled the basin, after that, the climate was so different that it couldn't maintain. its
Wrong
fill.
one.
So
Yeah.
the
Whatever.
fact that they place it further back than this change to the Holocene is strange to me, because is there evidence to suggest that the climate had shifted so much that it couldn't maintain the filling of the lake?
Here's what I would speculate. This is with some.
I died even with the body armor. I didn't even upload it.
processes, is that
Even with the body
ice
armor, I
cap
died.
grows, it's pushing the jet stream south, and when you get to the full mass of the ice, maybe up to 1.5 miles, maybe even 2 miles thick.
Can't believe the glass didn't
certainly we
open.
know 1.5 miles.
That was stupid.
It's causing major changes in the weather just because of its presence. And whatever the change in the climate was that allowed these ice caps to form,
Fuck off.
once they form, they then have secondary consequences. One, which is that the jet stream is pushed farther south. So that jet stream is now moving over these arid basins of the western states.
Like what?
And giving a lot more precipitation.
I like OC up
which
there
caused
too.
A lot more lakes to form, a lot more greenery, and so on, right? Now, I think that there was probably a lake a large lake, much larger than modern day Great Salt Lake for sure, in the basin of Lake Bonneville. But at its peak, Bonneville Lake was up to 1,000 feet deep.
What? Like,
I would speculate that probably during
Like, it's so
the
dumb.
latter part of the Pleistocene,
It's so dumb.
you might have had a lake in there that varied between 2 and 3 up to maybe
I think it's
500
my
or
fourth most
600.
played game on Steam.
But
Not done
then-
yet.
The
Cool.
flood was a consequence
I heard it's good.
of an anomalous,
I don't really like
which would have been connected with
I
an
like
anomalous
modern
rise in
day
lake
technology
levels,
stuff.
Which would have been an anomalous.
Not really a big fan of.
precipitation. Prolonged, perhaps. I would think it was
Maybe, I don't
prolonged. And I would also look.
Definitely is
this is the work
probably
that
the-
still needs to be done. Is the correlation, the temporal
like
correlation.
the best, one of the best
Because
well-made
we
games
could go
ever.
into,
You know what I mean?
um,
Subject is irrelevant.
Chiricahua Mountains, for example,
If it's
down
made
in
by, like, the
southern
best
Arizona,
team ever,
flanking
like Rockstar.
Arizona and New Mexico, and there's evidence of massive erosion of the welded tufts that form the Chiricahua Mountains and Lake. You remember, Brad, the name of the lake there we visited?
Yep.
Wilcox Playa.
Wilcox.
I
yeah,
just say
Will,
I
thanks,
just say
Brad.
obvious stuff on this
Wilcox
channel.
Playa, which is a dry lake basin, but we actually did go
what I
and
do.
we found the shoreline. We have pictures of us standing on the ancient shoreline. So there was a massive lake that formed next to the Chiricahua Mountains that have this really extreme erosion on it. And that would be a very interesting tour to take. We could go over to the Haymaker
Please let this
River.
be
I
the
have
run.
pictures of Brad
Like, please.
standing up on
Please.
6, 7, 8 foot, really almost perfectly rounded boulders. You know, huge, like just channels choked with these big round boulders, and that's on the flanks of the Valles Calderas, which shows that. And then there's evidence of a rapid filling of the caldera and overflow of the caldera, and the down cutting of a major breach channel through the walls. So I mean, you could go over. You know, we could go over. We could show the evidence in the southern Appalachians for some kind of intense precipitation events that would have occurred within that same window, terminal Pleistocene, early Holocene. Go up to New York, all the way up the Appalachians. I mean, we you know, my point here is we go on and on and on, and we can find evidence for catastrophic changes, geomorphic changes, climatic and environmental changes. What we don't have is a precise chronological correlation between these events. You know, are they happening separately and independently, or is the gigantic flooding in the southern Appalachians happening at the same time as the gigantic flooding in Arizona, or the spillover of Lake Bonneville, or the cutting of the Finger Lakes? I don't know. But this needs to happen. In order to make sense out of all this, that's what we need. It's a really precise chronology correlating all of these events.
Wow.
In time. But we don't have that. So anything we've got, you know, let's suppose it all happened at once. That's one extreme, or it happened over a period of a few thousand years. And I don't think that any of the chronologies we've got so far don't precisely correlate anything, say, even to the century, much less say a decade or a year's. But if it's a millennia, you still got the other sequences that all of these events, apparently from the dating of them, would have happened within a 2 or 3 or maybe a 4,000 year interval. Okay, so if you've got all of these incredibly huge, intense flooding events, which would require intense precipitation of events.
I got him.
If they're happening all
What?
at once,
Like,
that's
come on.
one thing. Are they happening independently of others, separated, say, by decades or centuries? If that's the case, how do you explain that?
Please.
See, we don't know yet. We just don't have enough correlation between these
Oh my
phenomena,
God,
but we do know enough to
please.
say that, yeah, everywhere you look around
Please.
North America, you can see evidence of these catastrophic events. Now, to what extent can we connect these dots into a coherent phenomenon? I don't know the answer to that, but that's kind of where the work that lies ahead of us. You know, and either way,
What?
either
Like,
one of those two extremes
no.
is going to raise extremely
Why?
profound questions.
You mentioned this many shows ago, and it's kind of
Like,
wild
why?
to think about that. Many geologists, and it may be most of them, are really concerned with what's under the surface.
Yeah.
They're looking for
Wow,
oil,
it's,
or minerals, or something to mine. The stuff that's on the surface is like in the way.
In the way, yeah.
They like ignore it totally. So there's a whole segment of geologists that don't even care about the surface.
Doesn't matter, I would have died anyways.
The
I should have just, well, the glass wouldn't open, but I should have
those
just,
features that we look at
whatever,
intensely
it's fine.
and
Like,
love to
so
see
brutal.
and realize what story they tell, and many geologists don't even care that they're there.
I think more geologists are becoming aware of this. I mean, since we made our first excursion in '98, look what's happened. In '98, we went to make contact with the Ice Age Floods Institute. What did we find? Well, we found that it was one little old lady sitting in an office in a back room of the Better Business Bureau in Moses Lake. That was it.
Chamber of Commerce, yeah.
In the Chamber of Commerce.
In
That
Moses
was it.
Lake, right?
Moses Lake. Now, how many chapters of the Ice Age floods? I don't think at that time was there any geologist
start.
guided
Really good
tours that
start.
had happened?
this shit start.
I mean, to the general public, like we participated in?
I don't know up to that point, but I know the Geological Society of America regularly has, like every 3 or 4 years it seems now, has their meetings, their annual meetings
you.
and conferences in Portland or Seattle or somewhere, and they do tours of the Scablands extensively. I've been on several of them. I don't know how much before that they did. Before Brett's was really vindicated, and it became a something that obviously was a mega flood.
Yeah. Well, there definitely were. I mean, I have papers that were, the field guides for tours, but I think those tours were very limited, and I think that the group of them was probably like geology students, graduate students, things like that. I don't think it was much of a public kind of event.
Well, you
I don't think you had any of that.
remember when we went to Buffalo? What was it? The Buffalo
Bison Range.
Bison Range. That's it. The Bison Range, and they gave us pamphlets when we bought the tickets.
Yeah.
I remember I showed it to you, Randall. I was like, "Look at this! It looks like a brochure for our Scavlands tour. It had all the places we've hit."
Yeah.
And that was
Right.
was that the Ice Age floods people that were talking about that? What was that? I thought it was
Yes.
Brutal.
yeah. Yeah, they had Palouse Falls and Potholes Cataract and all that stuff. So
Yeah, they grew
Yeah.
quite quickly. I think it's kind
People
of
are
scaled
interested.
back some because, unfortunately, so many of the people that have time to, pursue their interests are retired. There's not really young people
This fucking
involved,
guy, man.
hardly any. Students that are just scarce on those tours or those trips.
Yeah.
So, they kind of went through a phase of growth and interest, and I think it has, scaled back some.
I think you're right.
Fortunately,
Yeah, because those last couple of tours I went on, I mean, the
Pretty
median
slow.
age was
Pretty
probably
slow.
50 or above.
Above, yeah.
Yeah, there weren't that many young people on it.
Typically, I was one of the youngest people there.
Yeah, so can you imagine that, Brad, being one of the youngest people there? we're talking
Must have been
ancients. Absolutely.
Like, fuck off. Fuck off.
I was just going to say, if you don't mind,
No, not at all. I want you to say, please.
going back to the, was it one event or maybe multiple events that lasted maybe 1,000 years or more? It wouldn't surprise me if it was.
Look how perfect that
multiple
was.
events possibly separated by
Jeez.
1,000 years or a number like that. Just
That was like
based on
textbook.
the stories that have come down to us from the ancient, the ancient past. That it's almost like some people witnessed some
Wow.
crazy catastrophic event, and then later people who still had the memory of witnessing the one
Didn't even get a
previous
chance to
witnessed another
upload
one,
it,
and this is where
let
the
alone
second
try to
coming,
do the
oh, it's
box
coming
drive.
again.
Didn't even get to the
The
glass.
idea that it's going
Got
to come again.
destroyed.
Maybe that's where that
Jeez,
comes from.
man.
And of course, the idea of like the fifth sun and some of these things, like the Egyptians saying we've seen so many destructions of the world. So you see what I'm saying? Like if it were to
It's pretty
come
fast.
to light, that
Yeah.
say from like 14,000, like Meltwater Pulse 1A, that that these were like very
This is a really good run.
rhythmic, catastrophic events.
This is a really good run.
That's where all of this whole mythos comes from.
Sure, absolutely, and yeah, and I do. I mean, I would lean towards a multiple, sort of an epoch of where you've got. What do you think about like an earthquake? An earthquake might be preceded by foreshocks. There may be several, huge tremors, and then a series of aftershocks. Right?
Come on.
And even though
Please.
you could say there's discrete.
That was so
foreshocks,
fast,
aftershocks,
man.
It's still part of the same
Like, what?
event, the same phenomenon.
I see.
Yeah, and
Like, it's so
and,
dumb.
And if we go back
It's
to
so
the
dumb.
work of Victor Klug,
I don't have enough health
Bill
anyways.
Napier and Asher and those guys, and this, which to me sounds more and more credible all the time. There
Like,
are
it's so dumb.
episodes or periods of concentrated bombardment epochs, if you want to call
Jesus
them that.
Christ, that's so.
Then yeah, why
He
not?
just
I mean, now
shoots
you've
you,
got a
man.
mechanism That could
boxcar
trigger
just
multiple
shoots you.
catastrophes over a few thousand years.
Like, he doesn't. He doesn't not shoot you.
Situation where
He just shoots you.
Earth crossing a relatively young, fresh
All moot.
stream of
Everything just feels
meteoritic
so
debris,
pointless.
as a result of a disintegrating comet, and there's absolutely evidence that such a thing happened. The comet Enki, Rudnicki, the Taurid meteor streams, that all of these are part of the same family of material that was the consequence of this disintegration of this great comet. which I would speculate probably whose first arrival in the inner solar system was what triggered the final, what's called the late Wisconsin phase of the Wisconsin Ice Age, which goes back over 100,000 years. But there was clearly a major event that triggered or launched the final phase somewhere between 25 and 28,000 years ago, right? Because there was a major climate degeneration from an interstadial warmth and a major retraction of the great ice sheets over North America. And then 26, 27, 28,000 years ago, somewhere in that climate cooled, glaciers expand rapidly, so that you now get to 21, 22,000 years ago, and you are in the full-fledged late glacial maximum that now sort of predominates somewhere between until about, I don't know, 15 to 20,000 years. And then it begins to ameliorate and the ice begins to shrink back. But there's one major punctuation mark in there, if the dating is to be accepted, and that would be meltwater pulse 1A, which is at about 14,600 years ago. So what triggered meltwater pulse 1A? I don't know. Impact?
Yeah, and I always bring this up. You have George's tusk, which is dated to like 30,000 years ago, and it has cosmic material in it.
Uh-huh.
So
He's
something caused
38
that.
or 39.
Yeah,
Well,
might be
and that
40.
could be related to what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Because I went back to about 28,000 years ago. But see, the thing there is you got to differentiate between, number one, when does the actual climate trigger, right?
Right.
And when do you amass a huge amount of ice? There's going to absolutely be a lag between,
Yes.
major development of huge glaciers and the climate change that allowed those glaciers to start forming in the first place.
Right. Yep.
Well, that's interesting. George, you're saying George's tusk was dated 28 or 29?
He said
I mean,
38
or 39?
close to 40.
So
yeah.
that's like
Yeah.
a precessional age and a half.
Yeah.
And then the Wisconsin you're talking about is like about a precessional age, and then of course the younger Dryas is a half a precessional age.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not age. The entire, precessional year, the great year.
Yeah, I got it.
We're in
So,
trouble, folks. We're all gonna die.
Yeah, we're having a long, unusual summer.
That was clutch.
But so that's why we need an influx of fresh, young, talented minds and thinkers into, the
Like, please work.
disciplines of
Like, please
history
work.
and knowledge of the earth. And
I don't
I
care.
got to say this, part of what's happened here is that
Please work.
geology has been replaced by essentially environmental geology, which is like
Why? Is because I moved?
which is important and good stuff. Don't get me wrong, but like I can use the example of Emory, where Julie got her degree and she took geology. And it was like 20 years after I took geology.
It all doesn't matter.
When I took geology, studying geology formally,
It doesn't matter. Nothing matters.
university setting, catastrophism had just become more or less accepted.
Like, that line was like
Primarily as a
perfect,
result
man.
of, the
That was, like,
realization
perfect.
of the impact geology. Impact geology
Oh,
really
as I
pretty
die
actively
instantly.
being studied
Who was the
and
first
pursued
line?
throughout the
Mm,
80s
dead
and
man.
into the early 90s. Because that year 1980 was when there was 3 independent papers came out, all speculating that the mass extinction at the end of the Cretaceous was caused by the impact. And of course, the one that was the most well known was the Alvarez paper that studied the iridium deposits in Italy, and then that was followed rapidly by a series of papers by other geologists and other teams looking at the same Cretaceous tertiary boundary, first I think in Denmark, then in New Zealand, and then followed up by a dozen other places around the world.
What?
Every place they looked at the KT boundary, there was that spike of iridium. So suddenly it was not pseudoscientific anymore to think about world-changing impacts. And then, but by the time Julie got in, that had all been the new catastrophism that was prevalent in my textbook was gone from her textbook.
Yo, what up, Fat
It was
Greg?
replaced by environmental.
How you doing, man?
And instead of learning about ice ages and impacts and
Hope you're good, man.
mass extinctions, she had to actually watch Inconvenient Truth twice in order to get her, not once wasn't good enough, but in order to get her diploma, she had to watch it twice. So,
Are you serious?
For the same class? Two different classes.
two different classes. Yeah, in order to pass, there's two different classes she had to watch. So she had to watch it twice.
I don't know. Inconvenient
Well, I know
Truth
we're-
has
There's a hell of a brainwashing going on.
well, I
We're
mean, it
planning
has
to tackle
information
some,
in it. It's facts
climate
in it.
events, but we're right up on a break. So you want to take the break, come back and dive into that
data.
material? What do you say?
Yeah, and then we'll start.
It's how people
we'll start laying
interpret
out
it. You can't get
a
upset
map
for people sharing
that people
data.
can use to try to really begin to.
You would hope that people
understand
make
the
their own
big picture
conclusion
of
based
global
on the
change,
data presented,
climate
you know?
change, etc. Planetary change, because that's all encompassed within planetary change, and then ultimately planetary change is.
So the thing is, he's like a
encompassed within
geologist.
the
He's not a
larger
biologist.
framework of
He knows a lot about
cosmic
biology,
evolution.
but he's not.
All right.
It's
We're
like
gonna
it's.
try and over
For example, I say I'm not a
podcasts
geologist,
will
but
be
I'm a
attempting to
biologist. I know
integrate
how
these
sensitive
various
the
magnitudes of
changes.
perception.
Not even just the ocean currents. He knows more about that, but just
Let me throw in
like
here
water
that we are
availability,
gonna do another
evapotranspiration
Montana tour.
rates,
This
and
was our first one, so
it's
we
like
got,
just
got some of the
ecosystem
kinks
stability
worked out, figured
shifts,
out,
like
you know,
instant
how much we
shifts.
can
You see it in the
see,
pollen
how
record
far
over the
we can
past
go during the day. So
10,
we're gonna
15,
do another
50,000
shot
years.
next September, so September 23.
like complete
Sounds
180
good to you.
shifts back and forth
Get in on
between
that
like
trip.
stable
It's
state
already,
ecosystems.
Dates announced on
And, like,
Contact at the Cabin website.
carbon dioxide
And,
is
also
higher
gonna
than
be
it's
up on
been
randallcarlson.com.
for the past
And definitely
hundreds
we're
of
going to
thousands
the
of
Scab
years.
Lands twice this
like 1.5
September,
times
so
higher, in fact.
2 trips late September of 22.
And that's what Inconvenient
so
Truth
those are
showed.
available also contact at thecabin.com and randallcarlson.com.
It's
Tours
all
and
about the
events.
conclusions
All
you
those
take
links
from
are going
it.
to be in the description as always. And it's a
I
great
can
time.
why?
It's
Like why?
freaking incredibly great people and amazing sceneries and just a good time for all. So yeah, come on out with us.
That's right. If you don't want to hang out with Kyle, come the first week. If you want to hang out with Kyle, show up the second week.
Everybody's gonna be there on the first week.
Can't believe I didn't get hit.
All right, we'll be right back. Yeah.
That was a pretty good line. See, I thought I was behind the mainframe, but I was in front of it. I think I got boosted in front of it. Like,
All right, welcome back, everybody, to Cosmographia, the Randall Carlson podcast. As always, want to mention our good friends over at CBDfromthegods.com.
I don't know why I can't get the
You got
stupid
sir.
glass.
from
Though.
CBD?
No, other than I was sure glad I had it on the Montana trip. You know, that's when I really discovered I valued the CBD oils when on the road. Because, you know, I tend to be an insomniac anyway. So when I'm on the road, sometimes it gets even worse. So I found I've been experimenting between, like with your mom actually turned me on to some melatonin.
Oh, yes.
So
Yeah, that's
I've
good stuff
been
too, yeah.
experimenting with CBD and smaller dose of CBD and then the melatonin. And man, that third night, fourth night, boom, man, I slept great. Those first 2 nights, didn't sleep so good, you know. But for one thing, it's a 3-hour difference. It's a 1,500 foot difference elevation. And it's a completely different sleeping environment, especially because the hotels have these soft mattresses. And so I'm used to sleeping on a 4-inch futon. So anyhow, that third night with that CBD and the melatonin, oh man, I slept good.
There you go.
And the fourth night, and good throughout the rest of the trip. So that's my story, and it's a true story.
Oh my gosh, I'm so tired.
You got to keep rested up for these tours because, yeah,
Oh yeah.
a lot of time in a van and more and more hikes and a couple waterfalls you didn't get to see on the Cumberland tour. So that sleep's a big one.
It's a big one. Yep.
Yeah, so support CBDfromthegods.com. They support Randall.
So tired, man.
You support them, you support Randall. CBDfromthegods.com with the promo code RCShipsFree to get you some free shipping. Help us, help you, help us all, help ourselves.
Yeah, I actually had a purposeful use for a CBD from the gods gummy just this afternoon. I came back and had been summoned to jury duty selection. So I went down there. That can be a stressful thing, hanging out and listening to lawyers and judges giving you the instructions and, you know, what you might have to do and be involved in, and earned my $12 for showing up for the day. But yeah, you know, just kind of takes that anxiety edge off if you got one of those. And of course, driving cross country to these trips, I actually had some helper drivers with me this time, so listening to them chatter, I had to just chill out in the back seat. Took a couple on the ride home too. So yeah, multi-use for those.
Yeah, and I can understand how you might have been stressed going in there, you know, into the courtroom with, you know, hoping that they don't discover you've got an outstanding arrest warrant. That would be stressful.
Yes.
One.
Brad
Had
is
to try
a
it.
national criminal.
Oh, there's more than one? Well, I knew there was at least 3 or 4, but I didn't want to. No, everybody, that's not true. Brad is not a wanted.
It was reckless driving while discharging multiple firearms, but we're not going to talk about that.
Evil Brad showed up once.
Yeah, we try to avoid the subject of evil Brad on this program.
That's why we feed Brad the gummies. It keeps evil Brad away.
That was a smart move, and they work. I really like the gummies.
So, yeah, geez, let me take a drink here.
I do like how, you know, on the trips, before we get into this main topic, Brad has his timing down perfectly for the Randall nap problem in the van. On the radios, I noticed that right when Randall got like
Finally!
Yeah, he's finally completely asleep. He's got full nod, nap tilt. Brad pops up on the radio, is like, Randall, do you want to talk about this landscape we're looking at over here? And Randall's like,
Yeah, like,
is he talking to me? Yes, Randall.
Randall Radio.
That's right.
you noticed, Russ, you were there. You bore witness to this.
I did.
The uncanny timing.
Yes, it was amazing. Every time you got full nap, bam, he popped up
Full
on the
nap
radio.
mode. All of a sudden, I'm being summoned
That's right.
from across
I'm
the great...
expecting if Randall was awake, he would be saying something right here.
Yeah. Yep.
So he must need to be rousted.
Yep.
Yeah, well, okay. I guess that's logical. Oh, boy.
Here we go.
So, we're back now, right? We're actually...
We
this
are
is,
back.
Yes.
Done it.
This is official. We are officially back.
That's right.
Well, speaking of back, I want to go back to 1888 and some of the early writings about the Great Ice Age by a professional geologist, in this case, James Gyges. If you look him up, Geikkie, anybody wants to look him up and learn more about him, James Gyges, yeah, he was a very pivotal character, pivotal contributions to the study of our planet back in the late 19th century, and he did a lot of really interesting work on the ice ages. He was particularly interested in that subject. So he wrote this book that came out in 1888, 545 pages. It was entitled The Great Ice Age and Its Relation to the Antiquity of Man. And he made some very interesting observations that weren't necessarily original to him, but were being made in the late 19th century that raised some very provocative questions about the past and changes in the past. So I'm just going to read a short couple of passages out of the book, The Great Ice Age and Its Relation to the Antiquity of Man. Reference has been made to the fact that both in cave deposits and river gravels, human implements are found associated with numerous mammalian remains belonging to species, many of which are either now locally or wholly extinct. The appearance of these remains suggests many interesting inquiries, but at present I shall confine attention to one question, namely, what were the climatical conditions under which these animals occupied our country. The species naturally arranged themselves in 3 groups. The first embracing those animals which are either at present living in warm climates or which have in southern regions their nearest representatives. The second comprising animals of Arctic and northern habitats, and the third containing such species as inhabit
whatever, it's too slow.
latitudes. So here's the problem that Gyges was confronted with. He's looking at cave deposits and river deposits, and he's finding the fossilized remains of animals that lived in temperate climates, in Arctic climates, and thirdly, as he says, warm climates. So you've got warm climates, temperate climates, and Arctic climates. Animal remains of species that are endemic to each of these different kinds of environments. So in trying to explain how you have this commingling of these different species that are products of completely different environmental circumstances, he looks at the idea of could they have been mass migrations of an Arctic species to a temperate zone, or vice versa, or a warm latitude species to a temperate zone, or to an Arctic. And the more he looks at that, the more untenable that idea seems to become. What would be the reason that you would have this massive migration of Arctic animals, say, to a temperate climate? Well, maybe that's a question that's still worth asking. But in any case, he does not believe that migratory movements of these animal species could explain this commingling. So he says the theory of annual migrations being, as I have tried to show, untenable, we can now only explain the remarkable commingling of northern, southern, and temperate groups in our superficial deposits by assuming that certain great oscillations of climate characterize the accumulation of our cave earths and river gravels. So in looking at this, using his term again, commingling of species within singular deposits, this was the conundrum with which he was faced, and others of his time, was trying to explain how this was brought about, right? So the question then becomes, were all of these species, we couldn't have assumed that they were all occupying this geographic area simultaneously. That would make no sense, right? Then clearly, if it was a southern climate or a temperate climate, you've got Arctic species, then how then can you rightfully claim that this is an Arctic species if its remains are not in fact found in the Arctic? So he comes upon this idea that this mingling of these species somehow must be related to climate change. And in his terms, he uses great oscillations of climate. He goes on, and he says, nevertheless, proofs are not wanting of a former mild condition of things having prevailed within comparatively recent times in the far north.
What? Like,
of
come
British
on.
America.
This is so dumb.
Sir Edward Belcher brought away from the dreary shores of Wellington Channel, which is
it's
at
so
a latitude
dumb.
of 75 degrees 32 minutes north. Which, if we look on a map, I could pull it up if we want, but it's way north, beyond the tree line. He says that from the Wellington Channel, 75 degrees 32 minutes north, portions of a tree, which there can be no doubt whatsoever had actually grown where he found it. The spot where it was found lay about 1.5 miles inland. I give the account in Sir Edward's own words. He says, I at once perceived that it was no spar and not placed there by human agency. It was the trunk and root of a tree, which had apparently grown there and flourished, but at what date, who will venture to say? It is indeed one of the questions involved in the change of this climate. He goes on to talk about his team of guys decided that they were going to try to look and find out the circumstances of the existence of this tree in the permafrost. So as the man proceeded with the removal of the frozen clay surrounding the roots, which were completely cemented as it were,
I think you
into the
shoot
frozen
faster
mass,
in Japanese with the
breaking off
POW.
short like earthenware,
POW
they
advantage.
gradually developed the roots,
That's why I keep
as
shooting
well as what
tree
appeared
there
to be
so
portions
much.
of leaves and other parts of the
In English,
tree,
it doesn't happen
which
that
had become
much.
embedded where they fell, and now were
I
barely
could be making that up,
distinguishable,
but
at least
I know
not so
AR
much
shoots
as some
faster.
impressions on coal.
It was pretty fast run. It wasn't the
Casual observer.
fastest though.
When a warmer climate prevailed here, this tree possibly put forth its
I
leaves
guess I gotta go
and
for the
afforded
natural
shade
stock
from
to the
sun,
Alu mainframe.
and most fervently did I
got him.
just now wish for its return. So it was this kind of evidence that led some of these early geologists to realize, well, hey, we're in an Arctic climate here, but there were once trees growing, where it's now permafrost and there's no trees. So clearly, what does that imply? It implies that the climate had changed. So it was evidence like this that really began to accumulate through the 1800s and into the early 20th century that clearly seemed to indicate that there had been, to use Gyges' term, certain great oscillations of, Gyges' term of certain great oscillations of climate. So let's just jump ahead to 2001. And I could draw from a vast array of literature here. I'm just going to pick one that I've got in my files. This is Trends, Rhythms, and Aberrations in Global Climate 65 million years ago to present. Appeared in the journal Science in 2001, as I said. And this is sort of a comprehensive overview of the sedimentary layers and what they of rock that have accumulated over the last 65 million years, because sedimentary rock, carries the imprint of the type of environment in which that rock formed. Particularly if it's sedimentary rock. I mean, if it's, it may have, it may be a sandstone that's formed from wind-blown desert sand. It may be a limestone that's from a shallow marine environment, full of marine life and so
please
on.
work. Please work.
Volcanic. All of these things are going to give clues as to
please.
the nature of the climate. I mean,
clearly, please.
It may be a
I'm begging. I'm begging you.
Lake.
I'm begging you, game.
Sediment from floodplains of
please.
rivers.
What do I even
and then,
do?
of course, all of that is going to have information.
I could seriously just kill them and try to do
as to
the Neil strat.
Deposition, which then can in turn tell you
I'm
more
gonna
about
try that.
For
I'm
example,
gonna do that.
if you have
I'm
a
gonna
lake
try it.
in an environment and streams are flowing into that lake, those streams are going to be carrying all kinds of life forms, both flora and fauna, the types of pollen and leaves and organic material that is carried by those streams or rivers into lakes, then gets deposited and becomes part of the layered bottom sediments. And so by taking core samples of the bottom of a lake, you can look through and decipher annual depositions of stream flow, which are usually pretty easy to see because of the fact that there are typical patterns of seasonal change as far as the influence of these freshwater streams into ponds and lakes and so on.
Fuck.
From all of this kind of stuff, you can infer information.
Pretty cool. That was a pretty cool run.
And the climate.
That was a pretty cool run.
Sedimentary rocks, not so much with metamorphic rocks.
See what it is.
And igneous rocks. You can tell, what happened locally or regionally.
That's
or
still not that fast. That's like
on a much larger scale by looking
142
at
pace, maybe.
And things like that. But it's
41.
not going to tell you a whole lot.
Still super slow.
About the actual environment at the time that eruption took place. Not so much like the sedimentary archive. So, anyways, this is now a quote from this work: "Trends, Rhythms, and Aberrations in Global Climate, 65 million years to the present."
I got lit up in the big room.
Zakos
Got lit up in the big room.
Primary author Mark Pagani was the
Again, I got
second
boosted
author,
into the mainframe. I need to get boosted behind the mainframe.
Through study of sedimentary archives, it has become increasingly
Maybe I
apparent
gotta aim for
during
that.
much of the last 65 million years and beyond, Earth's climate system has experienced continuous change, drifting from extremes of expansive warmth with ice-free poles to extremes of cold with massive continental ice sheets and polar ice caps.
Yeah.
The last decade has witnessed, and this is published in 2001, so this would have been the decade from of the 1990s, right? The last decade has witnessed a rapid growth in the inventory of high-resolution isotope records across the Cenozoic. The Cenozoic is the period we're now in. It followed the Mesozoic. It began with the great impact that severed the chain of life 66 million years ago, ended the Mesozoic, launched the Cenozoic, which saw the rise of mammals and eventually the appearance of hominids and then human beings somewhere around a couple 100,000 years ago or longer. So the last decade has witnessed a rapid growth in the inventory of high-resolution isotope records across the Cenozoic, aided by the greater availability of high-quality sediment cores recovered by the deep-sea drilling project and the ocean drilling program. The improved perspective provided by these records has led to some of the most exciting scientific developments of the last decade, including the discovery of, and here's where it's relevant to everything we've been talking about through all of these episodes, geologically abrupt shifts in climate as well as transient events, brief but extreme excursions, often associated with profound impacts on global environments and the biosphere. So we can see there that what I'm trying to show here is that over a period of more than a century, 120 years,
Guess I gotta do it where I don't reload.
you've got the insight and research that is current and contemporary is actually confirming what these guys of 100 to 120 and 150 years ago were beginning to realize, which is that there are these, whether you want to call them geologically abrupt events or certain great oscillations of climate. What we have between then and now is an encyclopedia of information and scientific research that's been conducted that demonstrates overwhelmingly the reality of massive climate and environmental changes, sometimes extremely fast, and orders of magnitude beyond anything we've experienced within the last couple of centuries that would encompass what we think of as modern civilization, which may go back far enough to basically correlate with the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. So I'm going to go back to about 40 years ago, and when modern climate science was really beginning to get its footing, and there were two great founders of climate science that I like to quote, Hubert Lamb and Herman Sloan. And so what I'll do here is let me see if I can't share my screen, and we'll do a picture of Hubert Lamb. People can see what this guy looks like while I quote him here. Oh, there you go. No, excellent. So this is the guy. So he was the founder of the Climate Research Unit that became quite famous and controversial with the, remember the release of the Climate Gate about 10 years ago? The thing about Hubert Lamb is even though he founded the CRU, the Climate Research Unit, that basically provides all of the climate data that the IPCC uses, and then was embroiled in the controversy, the Climate Gate controversy, when the emails between Phil Jones and some of these other guys got released, which we're going to talk about a little bit, but not right now. But so that institution that they work for is the Climate Research Unit, and it was founded by this guy here. However, what's interesting here is I suspect that if Hubert Lamb, who passed away in, as you can see, in 1997, would be rather dismayed about what has happened politically in the institution which he established. But people can make up their own mind. I'll start out by saying that the work of Hubert Lamb, and I'm going to quote him in the next, I'm going to kind of quote from his work, but he is usually never referenced by the proponents of anthropogenic greenhouse warming, or AGW, since it's, to anybody who really follows his work, would see that it's incompatible with the idea that there was a climate stasis prior to the advent of human influence. So let's look at what he actually said back in the day when he was founding this institution. He wrote this paper called An Approach to the Study of the Development of Climate and Its Impact in Human Affairs. It appeared in the compilation Climate in History, edited by T.M.L. Wigley, M.J. Ingram, and G. Farmer. It was published by Cambridge University Press.
I gotta do it without reloading.
Totally and thoroughly legitimate scholarly work. So let's listen to what Hubert had to say. Around 1880 to 1900, it was apparent from the first 100-year series of weather observations that the climatic averages of that time were very similar to those of a century earlier. And it became conventional to treat climate as essentially constant. Accordingly, the study of the development and possible changes of climate was given a very low priority, or more generally, neglected altogether. Given these circumstances, it was natural that the general public and workers in other disciplines also ignored the possibility that climate might not always be so stable and climatic change might affect their affairs. Of course, this did not apply to occasional extreme events, but the incidence of these, it was generally supposed, could be treated as random. By 1950, however, it was obvious that the climate had been changing significantly during the 20th century.
Come on, baby. No, that was so good.
Now this is important.
That was so good. See, I didn't reload there.
Which made things easier for most human activities in most parts of the world.
It's like I can do that. But
why did things become easier for most human activities in most parts of the world? He goes on and he says, there had been a general rise of prevailing temperatures, with recession of the ice of the Arctic seas and increasingly rapid recession of the glaciers almost everywhere. There were fewer failures of the monsoons in India and West Africa, and rainfall had increased in continental interiors. A scientific explanation of global warming in terms of the effects on the radiation balance by carbon dioxide, which man was adding to the atmosphere, an end product of all the fossil fuels burnt, won wide acceptance. This left it possible to believe that climate had been essentially constant until the Industrial Revolution. If we will demonstrate the influence of the climatic development and shocks produced in the course of this on human history, we must look first at extreme cases. For this purpose, the record of the last 1,000 years is well suited because it seems to have included a notably wide range of climatic regimes. The High Middle Ages evidently saw a persistently warm climatic epoch which lasted until about 1300 to 1310 in Europe and affected about at least 2/3 of the northern hemisphere in the previous 1 to 200 years. A peak of warmth seems to have been attained a few centuries earlier in Greenland and much more of the Arctic. And cooling
what up, Kingo? How you doing, man?
May have been responsible for an increase of storminess
what's up?
affecting the North
I saw you
Sea, perhaps much of the
requested
Atlantic and Europe after AD.
To chat on Xbox, I didn't. I turned off that. I don't. When I play Xbox, I play kind of
You begin to see how
just
this begins to
offline.
add up, but it's important
nothing
to note
personal, man.
that there
Pretty good.
is this
That's cool, man. Yeah, nothing
well-documented
personal, man. Just
increase in storm
I
risks
now I put
and
my
intense weather
my
events
presence
that
offline
follow
as
in the
unknown
wake of the global cooling
when I'm on
of the
Xbox.
little
No
ice
stress,
age.
man.
Okay.
If I want to be online on Xbox, I'll probably
The
stream
following centuries
while playing Xbox. But
brought a
if I want to be
series of
offline,
changes, some of them abrupt,
which is most of the time.
leading to the so-called Little Ice Age.
See your
between
picture,
about
yeah, buddy.
1550 and
Your profile
1700
picture.
or later,
I saw your profile
when the
picture, man. Yeah,
extent of ice
looks
on
good,
the
man.
Arctic
Looks sharp.
Sea and of ice and snow on
Nice
land
smile.
seems to have been
Good looking guy.
very important. Seems to have been greater than at any time since the last major glaciation. The changes of winter temperature amounting to a fall of the 50-year means of 1.5 degrees centigrade between the 13th and 17th centuries appears to have been accompanied by
fine.
similar changes.
I really shouldn't
in
have
other
reloaded,
seasons. These changes imply a shortening of the average
Thanks,
growing
nice.
season
Yeah,
by
man.
about a month,
It's true.
and a decline of almost
It's the
200
truth.
meters in the upper limit of productive cultivation of crops in England, and presumably in other places at about the same latitude in Europe.
What?
200 meters, that's, over 600 feet. So what that's going to do now, of course, is by removing, all of that cultivatable land for 200 meters, that's going to take a lot of aerial expanse of viable agricultural land out of commission. Okay? The fossil evidence and many actual reports of advancing glaciers in most parts of the world in the Little Ice Age period have been cataloged by many authors. For example, in Iceland, Norway, and the Alps, the records include the overrunning of farms and farmland by the glaciers, as well as disasters from avalanches, landslides, and the bursting of glacier-dammed lakes. Even in Ethiopia, there is evidence from Portuguese travelers that the snow line came down on the highest mountains, and in eastern equatorial Africa, the glaciers on Mount Kenya and Kilimanjaro were in more advanced positions than their present limits. The advance of the Arctic sea ice had already, by the 15th
What you're watching,
century,
it's
isolated the old
about
Viking colony in Greenland
Randall
from
Carlson
all contact with the outside
talking
world.
about
And the European population
how there's
there
been massive
died out.
climate
In the late
changes
17th
and like
century,
catastrophic
a
events
further
over the past
advance of the
10,000
ice
years.
caused Iceland to be surrounded and cut off.
So we're talking about like
in the
major
extreme
drastic
year
changes to
1695
climate over the
AD,
past 10,000 years
while a recent study indicated
to
that
kind of
in
curb
that year,
current climate
polar
alarmism.
water reached the entire
Not
coast
denying
of
the fact
Norway,
that
and for
like
30
the
years,
CO2 is
it
1.5
dominated
times
the
higher than
ocean
it's been over the
surface
past
between
500,000
Iceland
years, which is
and the
true.
Faroe Islands.
And
This
the
map
rapid temperature
The
rise.
ocean surface in that area
But he's
was about
basically trying to
5
curb climate
degrees
alarmism.
centigrade colder
But as he's a
than in the
geologist
present century.
and not a biologist, that he
That's
doesn't
pretty
understand the
significant by
sensitivity
itself.
of the biological system, in my opinion.
5
They
degrees
could
centigrade
potentially
colder is
easily
gonna be
switch
about
it
8 degrees
to
Fahrenheit, roughly.
desert
Doesn't
in
the,
inarable
I don't wanna
land,
go off on a
especially in
tangent here, but
northeast
doesn't
South
the
America and
legendary
Central
search for
Africa,
the Northwest Passage get
and even
involved
like
with this? Like the fact
South
that
sub-Saharan
sea
Africa as
ice
well.
And people,
if you're not
explorers
careful.
up there kept getting trapped.
Yes,
The ships would get stuck,
yes.
right? But then eventually, as the ice receded slowly over the centuries, it became open enough to travel there.
Please, come on.
Yes. All right, so that's
Like, man.
some of the words of Hubert.
Yo, happy, nice.
Okay, so he clearly is seeing
I'm not
that
happy.
there have been some pretty considerable changes in the last millennium. Okay, then let's move on to, are we seeing Hermann?
We are seeing Herman.
Okay, these two guys, Herman and Hubert, they were almost the same time. Let's see, Herman was,
Wow.
It was 13 to 97, I think, or he was 85. So yeah, real close.
yeah, real close. All right, so Herman wrote a book was called The Climate of Europe, Past, Present, and Future. He had an enormous, voluminous output of writings on climate, climate change and climate. This was part of
What?
the Atmospheric Sciences Library, published by D. Rydell Publishing Company. It's Chapter 2, Climate in the Last 1,000 Years, subtitled Natural Climatic Fluctuations and Change. So here's Hermau. Climate, even under its natural development alone, varies continually. Each year, each decade, each century, each millennium, since long before any question of impact of human activity. It is important to gauge the magnitudes and timescales of these variations, since planning should not be based on expectations of return to some non-existent norm. And the magnitude and extent of any changes attributable to man's activities, or even whether any such effects are occurring on more than a local scale, cannot be determined without knowing the range and the likely timing of changes due to natural causes. Extension of the record to earlier times by systematic use of the numerous historical documentary reports of weather available in Europe, as well as various forms of fossil or proxy data, indicates that the last 1,000 years saw a particularly great swing of the prevailing temperature level of more or less global
Fucking
extent.
hell. Like, fucking
This was
hell, man.
accompanied
This
by
level,
other
man.
changes, for example, of the wind and rainfall regimes that are largely determined by the global temperature level and its distribution. There was a long period of more or less sustained higher temperatures in this part of the world.
I don't want to play this level
between
anymore. I
AD
don't want to do this.
900 and 1300 or later, followed by a period of regression and glacier growth until between about 1550 and 1850, when there was probably the greatest extent of mountain glaciers and sea ice
Should we just do this for
in
fun?
both hemispheres since the last major ice age. There are some points of interest about the geographical extent of the warm and cold climate regimes, which respectively affected Europe in the early and middle to late centuries of the last millennium. The medieval warm epoch seems to have extended over nearly all of North America, the North Atlantic, and Europe in the 12th century.
Wow.
At that time, information from the highest northern latitudes
I'm dead.
seems to indicate that the Arctic generally was still enjoying a mild regime.
That was really bad.
Evidence from the southern hemisphere at that time is sparse, but there are indications of warmth in New Zealand, roughly contemporaneous with the warmth in Europe. And it has been supposed that the wave of Polynesian and Maori sea migration between about AD 600 and 1300 coincided with a time of warmth and higher sea
I don't know. I might play this for like another like 20 minutes or so, to be
some
honest.
melting of glaciers and ice sheets, giving more water clearance
Thanks for being here,
over
though.
the coral bars at the entrances to their
I really do appreciate it.
lagoons. There is more evidence from the last millennium. From both oxygen isotope work and forest studies, it seems clear that New Zealand underwent a sequence of temperature changes broadly paralleling that in Europe. Now, I think the implication, I'm going to make an aside comment there, that the implication of that is clearly contradicts the notion of those who are arguing that the medieval
Like,
warm
fuck
period
you.
and the Little Ice Age were not global in extent. I think we can go back 40 years and we can find extensive evidence from that time to this that the medieval warm period, the preceding Dark Ages cold period, and the succeeding or subsequent Little Ice Age were all, in fact, global in extent. From the variation of the glacier, back to Sloane's quote here, from the variations of the glaciers in Chile and elsewhere, including those near the equator in Africa and New Guinea, it seems clear that the colder regime of the Little Ice Age centuries was virtually worldwide in extent. From a variety of evidence, it seems that the colder climate, particularly in the 17th and 18th century, was, and this is extremely important, that the colder climate was subject to a wider range of year-to-year variations than the present century. The variations, and the quote, he goes on, the variations with which we are most concerned for planning purposes must be those on timescales from a single season up to 100 to 200 years. But it is worth noting in connection with the century-to-century prospect that a recent survey by Wigley et al. In 1979 indicates that each of the last 3 millennium has produced a period of colder climate and advancing glaciers in its middle centuries.
It's so
after
dumb.
a warmer period around the
It's so dumb.
the beginning of the millennium. The longer-term variations also are therefore of more than academic interest.
It's so
And I'm
dumb.
going to quote one more from around the same, from the 80s, John M. Grove, who wrote sort of the definitive work on the Little Ice Age, published by Routledge in London and in New York in 1988. Climatic changes come on several different timescales, between short-term fluctuations lasting a few years and changes extending over thousands of years. There are variations over a few centuries which may have profound effects on natural phenomena and human affairs. It is variations on this scale, stretching over several generations, with which we are concerned in studying the Little Ice Age. It was a period which may be seen as beginning in the 13th and 14th centuries, and then, after an interval of more clement conditions, culminating between the mid-16th and the mid-19th century. There was also a period of lower temperature over most, if not all, of the globe, sufficiently marked to have had important consequences. For several hundred years, climatic conditions in Europe had been kind. There were few poor harvests and famines were infrequent. The pack ice in the Arctic lay far to the north, and long sea voyages could be made in the small craft then in use. Communications between Scandinavia, Iceland, and Greenland were easier than they were to be again until the 20th century. Now we're talking here about the medieval warm period. You know, 900s, 1000s, 1100s, the period in Europe that was associated with the great cathedral building era. Icelanders made their first trip to Greenland about AD 982, and later they reached
Yo,
the
what
Canadian
up,
Arctic
Alka?
and may have even penetrated.
Been playing this since Feb
northwest
2021. Yeah, buddy, I have, man.
Grain was grown in Iceland.
Feb 21, that's my PV.
The northern fisheries
Yeah.
flourished, and in
I
mainland
have,
Europe,
man.
vineyards were in production 500 kilometers north of their present limits.
I have, dude.
Beneficent times
For
came
some
to an
advice.
end. Sea ice and stormier
Yeah.
seas made the passages between Norway, Iceland, and Greenland
Meh.
more difficult after 1200 AD. The last
Yeah,
report of a
my main
voyage
issue
to
is
Finland
the
was
box
made in
guard
1347.
from.
Life in Greenland became harder.
I'm
The
not
people were
lining it
cut
up
off from
perfectly,
Iceland and
which is
eventually
reducing
disappeared from history
consistency,
towards the end of the 15th
which is my
century.
biggest issue.
Grain
Even
would
there,
no
that
longer
wasn't.
ripen,
I was
in
trying to get the
Iceland.
perfect start.
first in the north and later in the south and the east.
What's
As
up,
the
Alka?
northern
Welcome, man.
winters became colder, fish migrations took different tracks, and life became tougher for fishermen as well as farmers. In mainland Europe, disastrous harvests were experienced in the latter part of the 13th and in the early 14th century, with famines in England in 1272, 1277, 1283, 1292, and 1311. The years between 13 and 14 and 1319 saw harvests fail in nearly every part of Europe.
Thank you, Alka,
Extremes of weather were greater,
for being
with
here.
severe winters and wet summers.
Hope you're doing well.
In consequence, the boundaries of cultivation contracted. In these late medieval times and in succeeding centuries, the impact of climatic fluctuations was felt most painfully and persistently in highland areas. Cultivated areas suffered especially in the uplands of oceanic regions.
See, like I'm
The
not
last
lining
few
that up
centuries,
perfectly.
Glaciers have
Really
advanced
bad.
in the mountains of Alpine Europe and Scandinavia, in the Northlands, and indeed in most other moist and cold parts of the world. In the decades between the late 16th and late 17th century, European glaciers swelled and their tongues advanced, destroying farms and damaging mountain villages. Streams fed from glaciers flooded more frequently, sometimes catastrophically. In many areas, this kind of hazard was compounded by landslides and avalanches triggered by increased precipitation and the greater glacial activity associated with it.
So dumb.
So it paints.
There's a is there an implication here that within certain limits, a warmer climate is just more stable in general, and
It's so
overall
dumb.
better for human civilization than than a colder one? That it's more stable somehow. It has
Yes.
more. It's got more energy. That's what it has to be warmer. But like a lower energy climate, a colder one has less stability within a certain range. I'm sure that would change if you got.
Yeah, there have to be
Out to
thresholds for
extremes, yeah.
both of those, because if you get completely
course.
cold, it's stable. It's cold.
Yeah, it's totally stable. Right.
Yeah, but once you get to that level of cold, you're screwed.
Right. Everything's dead.
Absolutely, but
Yeah.
just talking about stability in terms of like the energy input into the climate.
Yeah. It's
So-
just an interesting idea.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to think about it that way.
Thinking of the thresholds being like, once you add so much energy into it, then it becomes maybe more chaotic. Like there's got to be thresholds.
Yeah.
There's got to be thresholds, right?
Yeah.
But
so
as a
we're-
rule,
Yeah. So what we're looking at is like there's a specific range
So dumb.
that most climate is within on Earth, at least that we know of, and in that range, it's the higher energy state that's more stable. That's just really
yes,
interesting.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting.
As we're getting to the wrap up here, let me circle back then to Herman, back to the climate of Europe, past, present, and future, just to try to put a cap on this and some of the lessons we need to derive from. So he goes on to say,
Why
from
the fuck did he not
1300
run out a
onwards,
little bit more?
in the course of the changes
fuck,
which
man.
ushered in the Little Ice Age, the climate became. Now this, we just were quoting from Gene M. Grove, right? Now we're back to Herman Sloan. He says from 1300 onward, in the course of the changes which ushered in the Little Ice Age, the climate became notably erratic and underwent a number of sharp variations from decade to decade, as well as from year to year. The variability and the occurrence of extreme seasons of various kinds must have borne very heavily on the primitive agricultural economies then existing. And it is clear that there were severe effects on the health of people and animals and in diseases affecting the crops. The most fearsome episodes of the times in these regards were the visitations of the Great Plague, the Black Death, as well as the occurrences of sheer starvation and of ergotism, a disease of claviceps purpurea, also known as St. Anthony's fire, contracted from bread made with flour affected by the ergot blight of blackened grain in damp harvest. The warm climate of the 12th and 13th centuries in Europe can, to some extent, be traced back to the 10th century, and in the long tree ring series of oaks in central and western Germany. At that time, also, farm settlements were spreading.
I'll probably play
up
for
to
like 10 more
200
minutes.
meters higher than before on the hill
Thanks for being
country
here.
of Norway, and doubtless elsewhere in northern Europe. Cultivation of the vine was also spreading further north in many parts of Europe, and ultimately spread to greater heights than today. In the 13th century, and probably right from AD 1000, wheat was grown as far north as 64 degrees north latitude in Norway. Cultivation spread by the 1280s to heights up to 320 meters above sea level in northern England near the Scottish border, actually to 425 meters in southeast Scotland. The same century has been described as the Golden Age in the history of Scotland. In Europe,
It's so
the
dumb.
first signs of serious climatic disturbance came with a number of great wind storms and sea floods over the low-lying coasts, for instance, around the North Sea. In the 13th century, the reported drowning of 100,000 to 400,000 people in some of these incidents places them among the worst ever recorded weather disasters. The advance of agriculture and the northward and upward spread of vineyards on the hills of Europe seems to have ceased about 1300 to 1310. In England, the cessation was abrupt, coming as it did after a few decades in which the spread had been vigorous. And it is clear that, apart from the great storms at sea and floods of the low-lying coasts in the 13th century, the first bad climatic shocks came at this time. Of the period 1693 to 1700 in Scotland, there are many dire accounts from parish records in the old statistical account. In the upland parishes of Scotland, it was reported that 1/3 of the people died in those years. Many were buried in mass graves, and whole villages disappeared. These experiences, bitterly described at the time in old Scottish Parliament, probably made the union of Scotland with England, which took effect in 1707, inevitable. In Iceland, parish
There we
records
go.
report that whole
Fucking
farms
side
disappeared
guard
under the
scrub
increasing
motherfucker.
glaciers and ice sheets at this time. And at various times between about 1600 and 1850, there was great alarm among the villages and farm communities in the Alps and in Norway over the advancing glaciers. Many pastures and whole farms and villages were in fact overrun.
Yo, what's up, Uncle Jesse?
There we go.
Okay.
What's up, Vic? This is
There the glaze,
Randall Carlson.
Glace. This is an example of a valley being overrun by a Little Ice Age glacier. You can
What?
Go through and look at some of these.
I was too far back.
Here's,
That sucks.
So here's the print from.
Like, that really
oh,
sucks.
Probably the late 17, early 1800s, and then a photograph that would have, I think, been taken in the 90s. And so you can see the arrows pointing.
I was a
out
little
here,
too
the
far
high
back.
Marks.
Oh, yeah.
Here's the important thing that people need to realize. This glacier recession did not begin in the last few decades. It began at the end of the Little Ice Age between the early and mid.
See, like, I still got boosted behind.
and has been
Is that like Jesse Ventura? No, not that. They're both from Minnesota.
Well, so here we are on looking at Svalbard, and you see
It's Randall it's Randall Carlson, that geologist,
very clearly. That's the Little
Egyptologist,
Ice Age mooring.
geologist,
So,
catastrophist,
interesting perspective here is during the Great Ice
catastrophist.
Age, this valley would have been completely
Jesse
filled
Ventura.
with ice. That is gone now, and during the Little Ice Age, this was the extent to which the Valley Glacier extended out. You know, the tributary valley extended out onto the plain, and then it's receded this much between its maximum extension and its withdrawal at the time this picture was
What's up, Dick? I'm gonna stop playing soon, though, man.
Mid-90s.
I might want to play like an hour or two, like not every day, but
But this is, you know, this
days,
is pretty
daily.
evident right there.
Yeah.
You know?
not every
Although I
day,
can see
but
it's transporting all that material in it too. That line.
Yes.
there comes a point where
All
it
of
just
that
becomes
material
so
Well, if you look up here at the glacier,
just tired. It's like lifting weights,
That's what I'm
man.
talking
Playing
about.
this
Yeah, the
level's
lines
like
of
lifting
sediment,
weights.
it's pulling through it. Yeah.
Yep.
That's really awesome.
Yeah. So then there's a lot
Mentally.
of these paintings. I think we'll look at some of those next time as well. But during the Little Ice Age.
I get
when-
tired, man.
This is
I
this
get
one's
tired
showing the
playing this
frozen
game.
canals of Holland, which doesn't occur now.
Put my whole heart and soul into each run.
Growing out under the Gap Valley floor.
Yep, gonna take over that.
So yeah, I'll probably sign off in like
Yeah.
8 minutes or so.
Wow.
Thanks for being here, though.
And then this is a good one because it shows the retreat. This is about 1775 to 1780, about to overrun this church. And then this is about 1966. So if we go back and forth here, you can see the valley, and the ice has retreated up to this level. Here, you see the ice up here. So now you can see that what was previously under the glacier here in 1780, this all forested across here. And of course, this is 1966. So all of this, the bulk of this glacier recession took place in the latter half of the 1800s and first half of the 1900s. And it's only like in the last decade or two that carbon dioxide is acknowledged to have been concentrated enough in the atmosphere to have affected any kind of measurable global warming at all. So this glacier recession preceded by many decades.
Now, can the recession
Like, come on,
also
man.
be caused by
Like-
lowered precipitation in the collection areas, or will that?
Oh yeah, I
Okay.
sure it can, yes.
Okay.
Right. The Argentière Glacier, as it appeared in 1780, you see it approaching out here. You see the village here and the farms. This caused a lot of anxiety to these people,
Yeah.
watching this grow day by day, moving in like it's going to wipe out their
Yeah,
existence.
crushing trees, making noise, like groaning
Yeah,
all night.
yeah,
Must
yeah.
have sounded like a monster coming out of the mountains. Yeah.
Yep. So this is about 1780, and then here's a photograph from 1966.
Jess Ventura.
So it's gone. You see, it's completely.
Yeah, I wish we were
Yeah, the
listening
whole
to
area's
Jess
become
Ventura.
reforested in here compared to here. So this is an
That's what I'm
engraving.
talking about. Look at that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're bringing up the pictures I was just mentioning. It's like I've
Fucking
seen
hell.
some of this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Like,
Yeah,
so
glacier's totally
stupid.
gone. Yep. Look at that.
I thought
That must have been
Thor
scary.
destroyed all the ice giants.
Yeah. What happened? Odin.
Odin. That's who it was. Yeah, Odin. He destroyed the ice
Slew
giants.
the ice giants.
Yeah.
Right.
And then here's Southern Alps of New Zealand. This is a good one. This is
Use that arrow key, Randall.
yeah. Thank you.
Stop using the mouse. There you go. And Kronos put his hat on, so we gotta wrap it up here.
Okay.
Yeah, look at that.
Like,
You know,
fuck off, man.
Yeah.
3/5. We got about 5 more images. We'll just breeze through them here. You can see the recession. So here we are, about 1872, 1905, and so this is
Fine.
recession. Major recession is taking place long before any thought of carbon dioxide-induced global warming. And here we are, 1940.
Ah, yeah.
So it's so this map. The
Fuck, I don't know why I
majority of this
switched
glacier
it.
recession took place
should have done the goose. I
prior
didn't
to
do the goose.
World War II.
It's fine. I know how it
All
was slow
sides
anyways.
concerned with this generally conceded around World War II and in the immediate thereafter was when carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere may have just reached the minimal amount necessary to affect any kind of noticeable or measurable warming.
Got yourself a nice proglacial lake there.
Yep, there you go, Proglacial Lake.
Yep.
About ready to burst out at 700 million cubic feet per second. And then diagram showing the recession of Franz Josef Glacier from 1865 to 1965. So that's, you can see here, highlight the high 1865, by 1907, by 1930, and by 1950. And so the recession of glaciers that has been measured in the last 20, 30, 40 years is a continuation of recession that has been going on since the mid-19th century. And it's important to provide that context in order to try to come up with any understanding of what it is that's happening. The coldest centuries in 8,000 years, the Little Ice Age causes a human consequence. The coldest century. Now, as we conclude, let's just keep this in mind. When if we're looking at the coldest centuries in 8,000 years, and then we have any warming at all relative to that, it's going to appear anomalous, right? But when you look at the big picture, there's nothing. What's anomalous is the cold weather
Not
that
the
we're
warming.
using as the baseline.
Right. Yeah.
Ice fairs on the frozen Thames River, which is not frozen over. What was it since? I got it in here, I think. Yeah, 1804 was the last time it froze over. It has not frozen
what?
over since.
Who?
The Thames River in England has not frozen over since 1804.
Oh, I love it. I love it that you don't care if we don't lie. Yeah, I mean, I like it in Canada. Not gonna lie, it's true.
You've seen that. This is an interesting. It's the same valley. You go from here and watch. And the glacier. Completely. And this
That's
is
amazing.
And then look at this again. So, Little Ice Age. And now as far as the folks living in
I
this
don't know. I'm
valley,
probably gonna sign off pretty
which
soon.
environment would they prefer? This or this?
It's like, what? I've been waiting for 2 hours again.
Yeah. Well, you might want a fortress of solitude beneath that glacier. You never know.
Yeah.
But only one person can be in the fortress of solitude. So.
Yeah, here you go. Just at the turn of the century and in 2008. Same here. From this to this. From this to this. So this is 19th century. This is early 20th. Lyell Glacier.
Oh yeah.
1883 to 2013. So, yeah, you can see here, this is like mid to late 1800s. I don't have the exact date. And this
Yeah,
would be
I'm like done.
more or less now. And you see the lake that's been left up here. Notice an ice dammed lake,
Yep, I see it.
and then this glacier filling this valley. And I believe this is a lake in here. And this will end with this graph, because this shows
Oh, it was on the last
average
second.
length of
Never
169
know.
glaciers from 1700 to 2000. The principal source of
Man.
health energy is solar
You know what
radiation.
keeps me up at night?
Variations
Thinking
in
about
glacier
like this
mass
level,
and
man.
length are primarily due to
It
temperature
keeps me up at
and
night,
precipitation.
man.
So there you go, Kyle.
Where I hold
That
my
answers the
pillow,
question right there. Temperature
Thinking I should be
and
playing this
precipitation.
game instead of
This
sleeping.
melting trend lags the temperature increase by about 20 years, so it predates the six-fold increase in hydrocarbon use even more than shown in the figure. So here you see what's happening here. Between 1800 and 1850, there's a trend, and this is the shortening of the glaciers here. Normalized glacier length, you see. So using this as 1700 as your zero baseline, you see here
Oh,
meters
it's going,
times
yes, it's going negative as it goes up.
going negative as it
Yeah.
goes up, exactly. So dashed line, before hydrocarbon increase, during increase. So notice where they put that, right about the end of World War II.
Right.
And so here's the trend line. So the trend line, this is the point I was trying to make in this graph really portrays, is that and again, it's saying here, this trend line should actually be moved back because there's this 20-year lag. But in any case, you don't see any change at all. You know, if global warming, carbon dioxide had any connection with glacier recession, you should see a major change in the trend line after 1945, 1950. But you don't. It's the glacier recession is just continuing to do what it had done for 150 years previously.
What?
How
Why?
many people really understand
Why?
when you're talking about glacier recession? We have to put things in context. So,
Went to way too wide there.
we'll conclude for now.
So
Wow.
Are you saying that
Wow.
the
Eh?
graph said the primary source of
I would have gone for the
milk
body
originates
armor
from
if the
sun?
door opened, but it didn't open.
Is milk
I
on
wouldn't
glaciers?
say anything
That's what
like
things in
that, would
con-
I?
It was so
I mean,
dumb.
it
I
kinda
can't believe
makes
that
sense
didn't
that the
open.
sun might be
That was
the
so
source
dumb.
Of, the heat. I think
That was so
probably,
dumb.
Kind of makes
Yeah.
sense,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Well, thanks, Randall.
Oh, you're
Great-
welcome.
great
And I hope you guys
presentation.
don't mind. Over the next few episodes, we're going to dive deep into the subject here.
No, I'm
I'm all about it.
Yeah.
Good, good.
So
Any
dumb.
closing statements, Brad? We covered the trips.
Well,
Anything
okay.
else? RandallCarlson.com.
Probably
for all your
good time to
Randall
stop.
Carlson needs.
Honestly.
Yeah, we'll get into
The-
more
the
detail
podcast
on
is
the live
ending.
shows, but yeah, always check the links and Randall Carlson tours and events page because yeah, there's some new live streams being planned.
Yep.
Some sacred geometry courses setting up, and those getting into
Maybe I should
conversion
plan
of
to
the
go for, like,
video
damn
classes,
53 one day, one of
starting
these
production of
days.
Greg's new studio there.
I'm
Some
so
videos
done
I'd
with
like to
Bunker
get those
117. There's no,
redone.
like,
So yeah, just
I did not have fun
stick with
playing
us.
that
Lots of things
level
happening for
at all.
Randall events, and also you can still get the Atlantis that was live streamed.
I never tried on
You can
Japanese,
get that
though.
on demand, so that's 7 hours of good stuff. Looks like on the YouTube page that those are still some of the most popular
Which is
videos. If
right.
you're going back to the very beginning and watching the Atlantis episodes.
Man,
Good.
Yep.
I've
And I'll
like
mention
Dam
that
00,
That the
Facility
sanctuary
00,
project, the school project is
Aztec
moving forward,
00,
and we're
Caverns
beginning an
00,
active search
Frigate
for
00.
property that might be suitable for a project of this nature. And we're going to be definitely disclosing more about this as we go forward.
All right.
Yeah.
Sign up for the newsletter.
Yep. And I'll mention also we've got some juicy
Train
stuff
00,
for the
Jungle
rest of the summer
00.
and the fall for what we're going to be doing. And, the
Although I
information
don't
we're gonna be
really
covering.
play them.
Because I've decided it's time for more disclosure.
All right.
Found that.
Yeah. I've been getting signals lately.
Kind of want to play Pelagic 2 Special Agent
All right, guys.
Moon signals?
Where are these?
and Villa
mysterious
Perfectation. I want to get a Villa
signals coming
Perfectation
from?
completion.
Flagged.
Uh-oh.
Welcome the flags.
All right, guys. Good night.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys. I really like those gummies.
To the sessions, to Ryan. I want to try the no X-ray vision B presses in that room. You know what I mean? Where you overload the system with B presses, that it works sometimes. But frequency of occurrence of success is very low, I found watching the streams. That's probably not my limiting factor also, in terms of time. It's a really good run. Come on. Come on. Come on. It's a really good run. Please, glass. Like, please. Oh my god, man. Please, glass. For freak's sakes. Fuck you. Fuck you. Like, fuck off. Oh, fucking hell. So stupid. It was so stupid. I was like a few frames away. I was a few frames away. That was so stupid. I was a few frames away. I should have went a little bit forward before shooting that drone like an idiot. Fucking hell. I hate that stupid thing. I just wanted a big room, you know? Like, it was so stupid. As Vega, relatively safe. There's been there's been a lot more like there's a mission down. There's a couple missions down there. I think there's a lot of people that like come to Ottawa from out west or whatever. Also, it's pretty safe, but man, there's a lot of mission people. I'm so angry about that stupid run. Stupid drone. Why to shoot the drone? It's gotta be like frame perfect. You gotta be right beside it. I wasn't. I only got one back boost too from the drone. Like, so dumb. It was just so dumb. Yeah, really. But that was such a dumb run, man. Such a dumb way to die. And it's like totally my fault too. It's not like I'm blaming the game, because that was totally my fault. But I had what, half a bar of health? And 8 body armor bars. No guarantee I would have survived the big room. There's never any guarantee. There's actually more of a probability that I wouldn't have survived than I would have survived. That's a pretty good run though. I don't know, I'll put on one more video maybe and then sign off soon. Like a short video.
Let me hit record.
All right.
Recording in progress.
And
The 25E is the tunnel.
McKinney
outside of
Falls,
Austin. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful place.
Just the day or few days after winter solstice, every day for the next 6 months, the sun will, assuming from the northern hemisphere, the sun will be rising a little bit further north every day. On spring equinox,
Protecting these things and
So-
maybe protecting the planet from them.
so let's a little more background on Asteroid Day. Who came up with the idea and who actually started? Wasn't the B12 Foundation, was it?
It may be some of the prior astronauts. I don't know that 100%.
I think it was. Perhaps, Kyle, you would look up Asteroid Day.
On it.
One of them is Rusty Schweikert and Ed Liu.
That makes sense.
They're part of the B612 Foundation. They've got a Sentinel mission. They're mapping the inner solar system of all the orbiting objects. They're trying to get a telescope in space to better detect the objects out there. But it's just
That's
in
so
the
dumb.
past 2 years that it's been recognized by the UN as an international.
Yeah, I'm playing for maybe like
international day.
2 or 3 more minutes.
This is really cool.
Thanks for being
Asteroid Day
here.
was co-founded in 2014 by Dr. Brian May, astrophysicist and lead guitarist
Right.
of Queen,
Queen, right.
together with Danica Remy, president of B612
Yep.
Foundation,
I knew there was the B612 connection.
Rusty Schweikert,
Fred, just
Apollo
mentioned
9 astronaut and filmmaker Richters, I guess.
Dr. Brian May is the guitarist of Queen, I think.
So
I think he's an astrophysicist.
Asteroids.
All about that. He's all for asteroid
I've always
research
thought
and
that was
stuff. I
was a
think.
good fit. So, yeah, 1908.
He's a
June
great
30th,
guitarist too.
Early in the morning.
I don't care if you don't get the mRNA.
Around
Thanks, buddy.
7:30 local
Thanks,
time,
man.
give or take a few
That's the
minutes.
nicest thing I've heard
And,
today.
What happened?
I'm just joking.
Well, it depends on, I guess.
Pluto
your
is
point.
opposite Venus today,
Interestingly, it appears
so
that
we're all feeling kind of
nobody
crappy.
was documented to have
Cathartic
died
actions with our
immediately
family,
from the event.
reconnecting with family that we
There
haven't
are
spoke with in a long
stories that probably
time.
some people, some
Just
of the
like
older
this
citizens
GoldenEye, I've played GoldenEye a long
to
time. The
Greasy people
catharsis,
that were
my
within the
GoldenEye
city that
family,
maybe suffered,
you know.
to the extent where their demise was
Actually,
hastened.
yeah.
You know, because there were people that were literally, even though they weren't within the blast zone itself.
Me not getting a
the
completion that's so
shockwaves
Venus
moving out
opposite
was
Pluto.
enough that even 30 and 40 miles away,
The
people were
love.
blown off their feet.
Pluto's all
Some
about
cases,
destruction
people blown
and
20 and 30 feet
decrepit
in the air, smashed against the
structures
tree.
decaying
So,
and death.
But
Tell me
so
more
the
about
day
this
was
astrology stuff.
undoubtedly
Yo, for sure,
sustained
man.
injuries, but there were no
It's pretty cool,
documented
man.
deaths
I don't know.
of
I've
individuals
come to believe
directly as a
it,
result of these
just
storms.
observing,
I heard
just
some
observing and seeing if, because there's this overall theme, right? Like this world is so diverse. There's arguably millions of things, even including thoughts and themes and feelings,
And I
right?
know you'll get
Not even
into
just
this, but I mean,
things, just
to
feelings.
be
There's
clear
like you
with
have
it up front,
arguably an
is
infinite number, if
June
not
30th
billions or
annually
trillions, right?
because that is
So
the
for it to
annual
encompass like
term
this
of the-
overall
of the
theme, like
storage
right now we're all feeling kind of low and
Yes.
kind of just like
Yes,
not
and-
nice
and
weather right
we
now with the
talked about
rain
that
and
too,
the
because
flooding
this
and
ties in with
just
everything
like
we
we're
were
like my
talking about
work is not going well, like
regarding
I'm not
the
making
Dryas
money
impact
yet. Things are going well,
and
but
the
like
possible
I'm not making
connection
money
between the
yet.
younger Dryas impact
My relationship's
or
great, but
in
I'm like I've been sick. I haven't seen her in a couple weeks. I've been sick, and it's just like
the family of
I keep
Torrid
getting
meteors
shot in Aztec
all
00.
seem to be interconnected and to be the progeny of perhaps one really big comet. that
If you
came
think
into
about it,
the
it's the only
solar
like
system
gravitational
sometime
masses in
between
our
20 and 30,000
entire
years
solar
ago.
system. You know what I mean?
I would say
So to argue that it
more
doesn't
like
have any
25
effect,
to
especially with the
30,000
moon
years ago.
crossing the tides
I
and
have a
stuff,
strong suspicion that if this
it would just be ignorant.
out
It would be
that there was, in
unscientific
fact,
to
it's
say that
appearing
there's no effect
pretty
of gravity on
incontrovertible at this
water
point.
bodies like us that are
Very large
70% made of
comet
water.
in the solar
You know,
system. I
like
would be looking for some sort of a
just
climatic
that should be
or
the null
biotic
hypothesis.
signature of that
Not
thing.
that there isn't any
What
effect.
we do in fact find is that generally what's considered the final
I'm not
phase,
Concluding
of the
it true
Wisconsin
based
ice
on
age, which is usually called the late Wisconsin,
faith, just based on observation.
really got active around 26,000 years ago. So
What's wild
it
is the
quite
people
well
that first discovered
documented
it thousands
if you
of
go
years
back, say,
ago.
30 to
That's just
40,000
wild.
years ago, the vast ice
Especially with the
complex
precession and
was
changing of
considerably
epochs.
contracted from what it was
in
at its late
ages.
glacial maximum around
Like we're entering the
18 to
age of
20,000
Aquarius now. We're all
you see.
learning,
So,
especially Saturn and
the
Aquarius, we're all
question
learning about
remains, and it's a question
importance of
we're
being
going to
independent and
examine in
independence
more
and
detail, is how
like for example
extensive
not
was
discriminating
that
people because they
recession
want to be
or
independent and not
contraction
taking that
of the ice
mRNA injection,
in
right?
that
That's probably like the main
that
Saturn
interval,
and Aquarius
generally
lesson
referred to as an
society's learning right now.
Do you remember those terms, guys? Glacial, interglacial, stadial,
So fast did I
interstadial.
survive.
You know, glacial, interglacial, and then stadial, interstadial. So you'll have fluctuations of extraordinary magnitude, such as the shift from full glacial, which was the late Pleistocene,
And those are all just the themes going on right now, right? Then there's like the birth signs, like the star, or where the sun is when you're born, right?
Although we know that there have been episodes where the ice globally has been far less than now. Meaning
And my sun is
levels
Leo.
20, 30, 40 feet higher.
I have a Leo sun, I have a Pisces moon,
frequently,
which means I
throughout
love
history,
drugs.
which would then imply
I love feeling
even
good
less
and
ice than now.
tripping
Full
out and
glacial,
dreaming,
What we could do is
and I have
for
a
rough
Sagittarius
concept, we could
rising,
basically double the amount of
which means that
glacial
like
ice on the planet
easygoing,
now to get
I'm
the amount of
happy,
glacial ice
lighthearted,
in the late
I talk a
Pleistocene, or I
lot.
should say, a Pleistocene is the 2.5 million.
And my
years.
midheaven is
Lake
actually
Wisconsin is the last
Libra, which is amazing. Midheaven is pretty much how the world views you,
in North America.
and Libra's all about
Europe,
balancing and like
it's
trying to find balance in
but
societies and stuff. And if I can
Fennoscandian
balance
ice, which
people's
was actually
money
what
and
Shelley
finances,
ice
that's my
age, which
astrological
Shelley coincides
purpose
with
to
the
others, and how
South
others see me as a Libra. That's huge.
was
That's
the name
massive,
given to
especially
their
financially,
last
right? Coming
phase
into
of ice
this,
growth. The ice sheet
like
itself
midheaven,
was called Fennoscandian.
what's the word?
Just like in North America,
Uh,
the
existence.
last phase of the ice
I
age
can be the
was in
balancer of people's
Wisconsin.
finances, which is like
The ice
exactly what
sheets
I'm working hard
themselves were the
towards.
Laurentide
I just got my
in the
license
area.
for.
Got that? Okay, so people are clear on that. So there was a late Wisconsin
It's like perfect.
interstadial where
And my mentor
climate
Paxton
warmed.
has a Pisces moon
And somewhere
also, which is
between,
cool.
say, in
Pisces
30,
moon, we
40,000
just, it's
years
kind of
ago,
like the
there
end
were
of the
extensive
zodiac in
forests
terms of
growing
feelings.
in
So
Canada,
people
where
say that we
10,000
feel
years
all the
later, there was
feelings of the
extensive
12
ice.
zodiacs. That's why we don't know how to
Now, the
respond
question is
sometimes,
how
because
much, let's say how much
we
was
have like a
the
smorgasbord of
totality
choices of feelings
glacial
of how to feel.
expansion in that interval there
You know what I mean?
compared to now. And of course, another
We're super sensitive.
auxiliary study that would help one understand that would be studies of sea level. Because obviously, the more the ice is reduced on the land, the higher
Introverted.
the ocean level is going to come, right? So when we look at this problem, we're not only going to look at evidence for what the ice was doing on the land, we're going to look at evidence for what it was
A lot of
doing on the
intuition.
sea level. Because as the ice is
A
growing
lot
on
of
land,
psychic
sea levels are
abilities
falling. The ice
also.
is shrinking on
That's what they
land, sea
say.
levels are rising, right?
I would
we
like to
have
harness that.
It's almost like a breathing in out or something, but we can see that this has happened many times throughout the Pleistocene. And in fact, that is
awesome.
really could be the signature phenomena that characterizes the Pleistocene, is this glacial expansion and contraction repeated.
Yeah, man, there's the
that
sun,
didn't
where your
seem
sun
to
is
be
when you're
going
born.
on
That's
in
who
the
you
previous
are.
epoch, the Pliocene, at least
There's your
certainly not
moon
to
when
the
you were
extent
born. That's how
that
you
it began to
feel.
do once the Pleistocene got underway around 2.5
And then
million
there's
years ago.
the
So,
zodiac
questions. Now,
on the horizon
we're getting at,
when the sun, like when you were born, coming off the horizon, and that's your rising. That's how you are to the world.
we're looking
That's how you
at,
act.
an event that would be very
And
much
then there's the midheaven. I
analog for
don't
what might
know
happen
where
during the
or
Younger
what
Dryas.
that is, but I know it
So,
exists, and
The
that's
Younger Dryas,
how
we've basically got
the
we gotta
world
get the picture in our hips.
sees you
Somewhere
and
around
your
25,
role
26,000
in this
years
world.
ago, whatever that was there, either
And then there's all the other
probably there was
placements, like
some
where your
ice, but
Venus is,
drastically reduced. It
pretty
began
much
to
like
expand.
where you love or like what you love.
Expanded and grew. Ice,
My
sea
Venus
levels
is in
went down.
Cancer, so
Between 18 and
I
20,000 years ago, it
I
appears that
appreciate
maybe
giving
LGM, the
people.
late glacial
I
mass.
appreciate
Then,
I
over a period
love
of a
that
couple
about
thousand years,
people
and
when they
this,
give,
as I've been going through the literature, I find that there's no
not
real
being
agreement
like
on
a
at
stingy
what point did the late glacial
person
mass
ruining
really
life. You know what I mean? I hate that
shit
shit so much.
shrink
People are
back.
stingy.
Some studies would
And when they
suggest that
like,
it was around
for example, like
15,000 to
like
16,000
telecom
years
companies, when they're
ago.
stingy, when you can just literally turn up the
But
tap for everybody all the time, all this
more
unlimited
gradually.
technology,
And
but
this
they
slower
control the tap.
gradual
Like that drives me nuts. That's like one of my
back
biggest
could be
angers in this world.
considered,
Which is very
this
anti-Cancerian.
way could be, thought of as being driven
Like, that shit
by
drives me
the much
insane.
slower astronomical
As
changes
you can
of
see,
what
so
is the
if-
so-called Milankovitch phenomena.
And I'm facing that
which
right now with
depends
Venus opposite
upon,
Pluto. Like fucking,
precessional,
I'm just facing
motion.
just
It depends
stingy,
on the
like just
obliquity
money
of the
issues, not
ecliptic.
money
It
issues.
depends on the eccentricity
Just turn it
of
up.
the Earth's orbit and how these things interact will change the amount of solar radiation reaching the surface, sometimes increasing it, sometimes decreasing.
Turn what up?
The expected result of that is that when the solar radiation
Oh, like
diminish,
the data.
ice is gonna
Yeah,
grow.
exactly.
When it increases, ice is going to shrink. Now, when we get to the
There's
end
more.
of
There's like
the,
Mercury. My Mercury's
Lake
in
Wisconsin, which would
Leo,
have been, say, between 13
so I sometimes
1,000
talk
years
very
ago,
dramatically.
What we're seeing is a shrinkage of ice of the ice sheet
Like,
that would be consistent
sometimes I
with the
communicate
shift
very
in Milankovitch,
dramatically.
Forces, you see. But then
And
what
intensely.
happened is this thing around 13,000 years ago, that was suddenly interrupted, you see. And so it's very possible that in that period of shrinkage, where perhaps 10 to 15%
Oh, and my Mars is
of the ice
conjunct
mass was
my
lost,
my Sun.
that is when you may have had the opening up the
So Mars is about like getting stuff done. It's about action.
just east of the
and
Rocky
sun is who I am. So when they're conjunct, it's like I get things. I like to get things done for who I am and who I am as myself. It's a really interesting, really potentially powerful conjunction. But there's also detriments, right? Like my Jupiter is opposite the sun, which means that I sometimes I have a hard time estimating sizes and stuff and money and time, and my estimates are often wrong, which is not good as a financial advisor, right? Where you promise too much or whatever. Or you'd be like, oh, I'll be there in 15 minutes, and you're like there in like 45 or 30, or like that's textbook Jupiter opposite the sun, or eating too much, or thinking I can get sub 146 on this level.
That point, to me, is a turning point. Also at 14.6 to 14.7, that really I think needs more scrutiny.
Yeah, it's pretty cool stuff, man.
I would like to dig up and see what I can find on, events around that time. The Meltwater Pulse 1A, because see, that may have marked the first phase of the great glacial meltwater.
Alright, I'm gonna probably sign off in like a minute. Maybe one more good run, maybe not. Thanks for being here.
But now, from the work of
very complicated stuff, yeah, buddy.
Others in Lake Hind, which we're going to look at.
It is.
We're seeing that there was catastrophic flooding there that dates right to Lake Hind is in Manitoba.
But I mean, there's like,
and there was catastrophic flooding.
Then there's the Chinese zodiac and stuff, which also has an effect. I think also really true. Like I'm an ox,
where we're moving with this is exploring the idea
so they're that's like inter-year stuff, whereas the traditional zodiac's like intra-year. Like I'm an ox, so I'm hard-headed, I'm stubborn, I'm strong, I carry a lot of stuff everywhere I go. I have like a huge bag of stuff, just of everything you need, like drone or gimbal or tripod or towels or skateboard or yo-yo or spin top or deodorant and gum and like cologne and
with perhaps the
my big ass bag of stuff, very Oxian.
Another bombardment phase at 12.
You could hear me rattle walking down the street. Ding, ding, ding.
Third at 11.6.
But I don't care. I have all my stuff. You need all your stuff. I'm the guy with the stuff. I have all this shit.
Sort of inexplicable, right? Because when you start
weed
and
vape and the technology and the business cards and the notepad and the calendar, it's a mess.
Sweeping over the land is pretty phenomenal. And
phone with the camera and the games and the videos and the Facebook.
Now, is it the sun? I don't know. I don't rule out the sun. But what does that, if it's the sun, like, let's say, just hypothesize, 14.6, 14.7 years ago, could there have been some hyperactive solar event that caused that first melting episode? I don't know, because, but I would think it would.
Like what? It's so stupid, man.
Would be the first two
it's
most
so dumb.
Things that would come to my mind. I don't know how you would go about proving that it could have been a solar event unless you could find maybe deposits of radiocarbon.
All right, 2 more minutes maybe.
I don't know if anybody's looked for that yet. And then we've got the 11.6 event. So right now,
thanks for being here.
The younger Dryas boundary stuff is focused on.
But yeah, in terms of the zodiacs, there's what? There's 12 zodiacs.
Biomass burning is being found.
There's 9 planets.
Okay, so anyways.
Mercury's about communication and
what we're seeing is we have to look
technology and traffic.
Phenomena that might have parallels to what happened.
Right, like Gemini is all about like information technology and that type of stuff. Gemini is like ruled by Mercury. Or Mercury rules Gemini, one of the two. And what else? Venus about love, like family.
The timing of it was interesting.
feminine.
because of the fact that seismographs and barographs had only recently come online.
Earth is Earth.
And because of the presence of seismographs, we're able to
Mars is about like
document
the war, fighting,
seismic
action, getting stuff done.
of an aerial
Aries is very
burst.
Marsian.
Now that's a pretty interesting thing to find out. That there's
Jupiter's
like a
always seeing the big
5.5
picture of
earthquake
life.
generated by an
Kind of
aerial
being like
burst 5 miles
star
up in the air.
lightheartedness, seeing the big
The other
picture,
thing
communication,
was,
a lot of talking.
and so understanding
Saturn's all
that
hard
we're actually,
lessons,
these terrestrial
learning
consequences
stuff,
of an air
really
burst
hard
has
lessons,
taught us a whole lot
like some of the
about
hardest lessons of
the
life.
nature and power of this event. Okay. The other thing is the presence of barographs.
Uranus is about independence, it's
Changes in
about
atmospheric
rebelling. Aquarius
Because
is
of the
kind of ruled
presence
by
of the
Uranus.
first newly installed barographs in England.
That's kind of like this Aquarius, like Saturn and Aquarius is about like
documentation of
independence
two
and
pressure
science. We're learning like
that passed
people
around the entire
people have
planet
learned so much
as a
about
result
science,
of
like biology and
explosion of
science,
Siberia.
yet so little about independence
Knowing
and,
that there
and
was these
discrimination.
pressure
Like
waves
the
in the
disparity
atmosphere
is such a Saturn
literally encompass the
in
entire
Aquarius
planet
thing
twice.
because that's what
Again,
we're
it's
really
given us
learning and
considerable
suffering through.
insight into the nature of that event that we wouldn't
What
have
else?
had it happened 10 to 20 years earlier.
Neptune is like
The other thing
foggy, kind of
interesting
deals
about
with
that is its
Pisces.
location, because if it had happened
It's all
just
about
maybe
like
100, 200 miles
fogginess
further
and
north, it would have been over
dreaming
tundra,
and
not
the
Taiga.
dreaminess, the
But because it
ethereal
was over
realm, the
Taiga,
psychic
where there's
realm, and Pluto's
old growth
about
forests, now we
the
get
death,
to see the effects
afterlife,
of the blast in terms of
decrepit,
radial
destruction of decrepit
right? So a
structures
lot
and
of,
things.
A lot
and
of data can be extracted from that. A lot of inferences can be made. as to
Scorpio's
the
very
power of the event.
Plutonian, plutonic.
Able to measure the actual
Scorpio
square
loves finding
area
out the truth,
of
the
the
underlying
destruction.
meaning of
Right?
everything.
Again, if this had happened 100 or 200 miles further north, we wouldn't have probably
stuff,
ever
man.
known about it. Now, see, even though the scientists in England saw the pressure waves passing over England, they didn't know
Wow.
what was causing that. It wasn't until over 20 years later that the dots were connected. Oh, June 30th.
One of the clearest things that I see in my life is Mercury retrogrades, where you see technology, like, so it happens 4 times every year for 3 weeks. So 12 weeks a year, every 3 weeks, every 4 months.
Get into our extended analysis of
And
the event.
I think I see it a lot in my life because my Mercury's in Leo, which is very dramatic and observant.
Let's look at
So it kind of brings everything to the front, in the forefront.
let's see.
That's why I see it very dramatically in my
I
life.
just wanted to say that if you take the length of the solar cycle, like 22 years,
Yeah.
and you want to divide that in to get roughly, what was it, 14,700 or something
14
years ago?
Yeah, say 14.
Alright,
So
I'm probably going to stop playing.
basically,
Thanks for watching. I really
If
appreciate
you
it.
multiply it times 666,
Maybe like this last run, maybe.
you get 14,652 years ago. Just saying.
Well,
Yeah, this last
you may
run.
have inadvertently stumbled upon something there, Kyle.
Fuck
but-
off. Like, fuck you. Like,
I
fuck
think
you,
we better
man.
devote a couple of years
Why don't
to
you suck a dick?
researching that, and then get back to us on it.
Will do.
Okay. Wait, so what was it again? If you took the 22-year cycle times 666,
Yeah.
What?
14,652.
I will not.
There we go.
Oh, what? I might suck a dick?
It's, yeah.
We are in a deep
Well,
solar minimum.
that proves it, Kyle.
Yeah.
That
Obviously,
proves it.
Dr. Shock was right.
What it proves, I'm not sure. Dr. Shock, how did he get into the conversation?
It's the sun, man.
The sun, the sun. Okay,
Sorry for the distraction.
it's okay. I need a distraction every now and then. Okay, so we'll do a share screen. And why?
Well, 666
What?
is all kind
Like
of
what?
related to the sun and the star world, and that can be a whole show
Like,
on
it's so
its own.
stupid.
Oh yeah.
It's so dumb.
More.
Okay, here we go. Here we are. There it is. So, just to get everybody kind of oriented, we have Siberia, and this area right here, all of this area is part of the Siberian Traps, which was this great magmatic outpouring that was coincidental with the Permian-Triassic boundary events and the greatest upheaval mass extinction in the history of biological life on Earth. So here's Lake Baikal, which is part of this rift system here. But so right there, which shows where the event happened. And this was one of the first papers in English that was published in
I hate this
1934
level.
after the discovery by Leonid Kulik. And this was a Russian scientist who studied the site. Published this in the Quarterly Journal of the Royal Meteorological Society. Air waves caused by the fall of the meteorite on 30th June 1908 in central Siberia. The flight and fall of the meteorite on 30th June 1908, amongst the greatest
Okay, that's it.
phenomena
Thanks for
known
being
to
here.
mankind,
Appreciate it very
occupy
much.
One of the foremost places
Thanks, Rev.
because
Thanks,
of the
Baron.
magnitude of the
Thanks,
phenomena
Hack
accompanying
Greg.
its movement through
Thanks,
the atmosphere.
King of Fall. Thanks,
If it had
Alchemass.
occurred 4 hours,
You rule.
37 minutes later,
You
the
rule.
city of Leningrad would have lain on the same parallel.
Whatever, I
near the
didn't
center
even
of the
time. Who
explosion.
cares?
Our knowledge of
Who
it
cares?
would probably have been considerably more extensive.
What about
Should we
understanding
read Nile?
more than mercy?
Really.
Let's read Eric.
So
Let's read
I'm gonna
Eric. Why
show this
not?
very briefly here because this is essentially a very abstracted map of the southern sky on June 30th. However, what is placed
Okay,
in
peace
there
out. You rule.
are the
You rule. You're the
radiant
best.
points or the
Have a good
positions
night. Have a good
in
day.
space
You guys are
out
the
of
best.
which various objects would
Thank
be
you.
seen to emanate. So, for example, up here on the upper
Guys
right,
and gals are the
Earth
best.
approaching comets. And so each one of these represents the position in the sky from which an Earth approaching comet had been documented.